We see a blood-filled battlefield and a man clad in complete white. He requests for any survivors to reply, and if they cannot speak, at least move or let out some noise. But when he receives complete silence, he realizes there is no one left. And the one who led to all this, the person who consolidated the demons for the first time, and led the whole humanity to its collapse, the high priest. Suddenly, he hears a baby crying and begins using a spell, which enables him to lift him up from the harm and drop him safely in the hands of a human girl. In the war against the demons, who came from the demonic realm, and the White Tower's mages who follow him, they put on everything on the line for the sake of humanity. If it weren't for them, no one could have done it. Suddenly, a girl with green hair appears, confirming the death of the high priest on April of 28th. She is Edna Sol Laplace, the world's final dragon and the observer who records history. She informs the master of the Mage Tower of having two news, one good and one bad, and he asks her to start with the bad one. She replies that the demonic army invaded the White Tower, and most mages passed away, and the tower was partially destroyed as well, along with its research resources. As for the good news, the Imperial forces arrived sooner than expected and were able to save some of his disciples. Hearing which, he is relieved a bit while Edna asks if he regrets his choice today, which he don't. Each person was someone he had selected himself, so he cannot say that he regret this choice in front of them. She asks for his final words, and he asks her to take care of his disciples since they are still young. She bows her head slightly and assures that she would check on them occasionally. Tower Master is surprised seeing a dragon bowing her head to a mere human, and she replies that he has the right to receive it. The whole continent and herself, they would never forget the sacrifices the White Tower made, which he also believes should be the case. But in the end, it's a lie that he has no regrets. If he had another good opportunity, even if he were to be called a villain, he would live a selfish live for his people. His last wish is to live that kind of life. And when he dies, Edna closes his eyes and confirms the passing of White Tower's master, Oscar Sage. We now also see a report of the casualties caused in the war, with the White Tower almost getting wiped out. We now see a new beginning, and an open window from which two young boys can be seen. When one of the small leaves suddenly touches the young gentleman's hand, he quickly wakes up, only to bump his hand onto another one and spill the water. The blue-haired kid gets annoyed at him for that, and calls his sleeping habits nasty, not even showing gratitude when he is nursing him, only for him to get confused even more. And we see it's Oscar, the Tower Master in this young body, who is surprised at himself being at a defenseless state, but more by the fact that he is still alive, since his heart should have been pierced by the High Priest. But when he tries to ask what is going on, someone else barges in, seemingly quite angry at him. He tries to take his anger out on Oscar, but the young boy stops him from doing so since Oscar just opened his eyes. He tries asking, how is he alive? And the elder comments that he must also be finding it fascinating that he is still alive. And judging by his robes, Oscar knows they are from White Tower and asks to explain the situation in detail, angering the elder even more. He tries to get close to Oscar to give him a tight slap, since he should be begging and reflecting instead. But he sees the attack coming and thinks the elder is an assassin planted by the demons, and quickly puts up wind shield as defense. If the wind instantaneously blocks the hand, the wrist that faces it will be broken like a straw. Believing that the elder is a low-level scrub attacking without knowing that, only to get surprised as his wind barrier dissipates quickly. He couldn't believe that he is using such pathetic magic. While the elder is impressed by his magic, commenting that he hasn't been sitting around all day it seems. He begins to take his leave, postponing his disciplinary action about the embezzlement of research fees. The young boy calls him crazy, but Oscar is too hung up on his wind magic disappearing just like that. The boy warns him of Elder Maxim's personality, and also that he is a bit off, but Oscar is focused on his mana circuits, mana quantity, and purity all being shit. He asks the young boy for the date, and he replies that it's September 21st. He asks if he has been asleep for 5 months, and the boy replies that it's been a day at most. He then demands to call Lloyd, or Gilly, or Shasha. He wants to hear the exact situation from them, only for the boy to get surprised that he is saying the name of traitors, and even saying the Tower Master's name casually, but when Oscar doesn't understand, the boy chalks it up to side effects, explaining that Lloyd Schultz abandoned Wit Tower and become a disciple of the Red Tower Master, and Gilead Dominic's store and ran away with a high-level magic book. only for Oscar to get angry at him for spouting bullshit. But seeing there is no air shaking around him, he realizes he is speaking the truth. He then confirms if Shasha is the Tower Master, and the young boy agrees, only for Oscar to argue, how can a 5-year-old be one? But the boy tells him to not forget to add the 20 before that, and Oscar believes that the young boy is simply imagining things. And just as he is calling it all out as fabrication, he gets a look at his current body in the mirror, and getting shocked at it, questioning, who are you? A bit later, he has calmed down. It has been 20 years since he died, and everything has developed so much. He spots street lights and cars, which he now knows is all thanks to the magic engineering. He smiles thinking that they all would have loved to see it. But regardless, he stops thinking about the past and starts to organize everything there is to know about his current body. Oscar Crusian, he was taken in by the White Tower at the age of 10 and is 20 years old, and a level 1 mage from a fallen noble family. He is a terrible mage, and is only level 1 at 20 years old. As a result of being felt rushed, he embezzled research funds to purchase an illegal elixir and collapsed after taking it. It makes sense because if he succeeded it would have increased his magic several times. But if he failed, his life would have been in danger. Frank told him that he was unconscious after all day after using it. But he believes this guy should have died of mana outburst. But suddenly, he notices that this body has too much mana for a level 1 mage. And most of it is pure mana that is not refined yet, which makes him wonder if it's obtained from that illegal elixir. Suddenly, he notices something in the body and pushes it towards his fingertips. And from that, he drops it on the ground. He quickly realizes that it's poison, which makes him question, why is there poison in his body? But he soon enough realizes that what is going on here. He knows that illegal elixir was definitely not a hoax. It was a proper elixir that would normally be impossible to get even at a premium price. But the problem is that Oscar didn't know that there was poison in it. After considering everything, he knows that Oscar didn't die from mana outburst but from poison instead. And the level of the poison is too high to have been used on a level 1 mage. If it weren't for him, there wouldn't even be traces of it. He don't know who is playing games with his soul, but now he has been giving the second opportunity that he was thinking of before he died. And a selfish life for his people, he believes it's not a bad time to start it right now. And as a payment for Oscar Crusian who lended him his body, he plans to take revenge on his behalf. We switch scenes to the outskirts of Surin. Someone arrives with a news about the store for his boss, who asks him about it. He hesitantly replies that someone wrecked it from the inside, causing the boss to get angry. He was also asking around for the person who sold the elixir to him, and wonders if it's Oscar, but the boss replies, it cannot be since Oscar is a theory mage, and must be on the verge of death. His henchman is still worried about the White Tower investigating this incident, and the boss replies, if he forgot who asked them to do this to Oscar. He was someone wearing the White Tower's ring. Suddenly, they are shocked upon overhearing someone commenting that no idiot would be so obvious about their identity. And it turns out to be none other than Oscar. He tracked down the faint scent in the bottle and found more people than expected involved in this incident. The boss asks if he was the one who destroyed the store, and Oscar agrees, stating that he is quite interested in knowing who they were talking about just now, only for the boss to remark that they were planning to let him go if he didn't heard anything and orders his henchman to kill him, who quickly jumps on him to do so. But Oscar easily dodges and uses his wind cutter spell, slicing the guy's head clean off, not without getting annoyed at the result, as it only cut his head off. This scares the boss shitless, and he pulls out a firearm on Oscar. But seeing the bullets, he only finds them interesting instead of threatening, and blocks them with his wind magic, while finding the principle behind them intriguing. Boss is shocked at him blocking those bullets, and Oscar is slight happy from finally learning what they are called, and gracefully returns them towards him as he gets shot multiple times on his body. While the boss falls, Oscar also informs him that his underlings won't be coming since the sounds from this room are blocked. But the boss is shocked that he is able to use a level 5 spell, Silence at level 1, but Oscar corrects him that what he used was Soundbind, which simply keeps the sound in this room. But regardless, he starts his questioning. Who is the one who requested to harm him? But the guy obviously refuses to speak at first, causing Oscar to comment that he must value his pride more than his life, and uses a spell on him. It creates wind inside his body, making it feel as if thousands of needles are piercing him from inside. Oscar tells him to quickly speak up since he don't like to torture others either, and the guy finally begs him to stop. And so, Oscar removes the spell and asks him to tell him everything. He explains that his patron only gave him the elixir while instructing to sell it to him at cheap price. Oscar asks for his appearance, and he replies that he had a hood over his face, but he was wearing a white tower's ring. He thinks that it was probably to deceive this guy and asks for further information. And the guy replies that he had a unique scent, a refreshing and clear mint smell. Oscar finds it worth remembering and asks, how was he going to deal with the aftermath after killing him? And he replies that he didn't think the White Tower would conduct a real investigation since they are currently busy with their withdrawal from the 4 main towers. Hearing which surprises Oscar, and he quickly inquires about it, only for the guy to reply that he should know more about it than he does. But he makes up an excuse that the elixir made him forget, and the guy decides to get the documents for him. He hands over him the relevant documents, and Oscar begins reading them. The White Knight marks the High Priest's death and Oscar Sage's sacrifice, which earned the White Tower tax-free privileges. Yet, 20 years after their downfall, they've hit record lows, with experts blaming their lack of advanced magic. An important imperial announcement awaits this year's festival. Oscar is surprised to know that his tower doesn't have advanced magic, since he remembers giving documents to Edna to prevent it from happening. And also the fact they got the worst business results, which makes him ask the guy about the business other towers are running. The Yellow Tower controls lightning, and opened up the great magic engineering era, contributing to creating street lights, cars, etc. The Blue Tower contributed to the business of drinking water, agriculture, and potions. The Red Tower joined militant ranks and assisted in monster subjugations and other missions. Oscar asks about the White Tower, and the guy hesitates to reply, but ends up saying that they do deliveries, which shocks him. He once again confirms with the guy, and he replies that they got wind riders who can fly. They have great advantage in delivering items quickly. The mages of the White Towers are supposed to rule over the skies. It was seen as freedom and bravery, and were compared to dragons. He asks, who pushed for such a ridiculous business idea, and he replies that it was the current White Tower master, which are his own disciples. He then asks about the potion and agriculture industry, as potion is supposed to be the largest profit source for a tower. Why is the Blue Tower taking it whole? And he replies, they have monopoly over the whole potion market. But Oscar knows that it was White Tower who were at the top 20 years ago, but all of their recipes are burnt now. Blue Tower is also selling clean water at an expensive price, and bringing rain to area experiencing drought. Oscar doesn't understand the need to buy clean water, which the guy replies is the new craze for rich people. Oscar does realize that his tower cannot catch up to others in terms of profit, and this year's White Knight Festival is the last chance to prove their worth, but it's only 7 months to it. We see the guy trembling and pleading to Oscar to save him, who wonders if he should do so since he gave him lots of information. But upon seeing his list of crime, he quickly changes his mind and leaves from the window while telling him to leave a good next life. Back at the White Tower, he enters his chamber, being all tired. He finds it really troubling that he is getting exhausted from only 2 spells, and notes that he won't be able to use that magic with his current body. It's the magic which made Oscar Sage the greatest mage in human history, Wind Archive. But the spell quickly disperses upon use. So he decides to check on the body's condition first by running a full magic scan, and also begins to read some more information about this body's previous owner. Oscar Crusian, the heir of Count Crusian and the sole survivor of a disastrous mansion fire. The magic world realized his genius early on, and the expectations were so high that they fought against each other to recruit him. In 6 years, he was enrolled in the Empire's Academy's magic faculty and never scored less than full marks. He published extraordinary thesis and was hailed as a genius, which only made him curious on why was Oscar stuck at level 1. But upon reading further, he is shocked to find out that he had mana deficiency syndrome, which makes him realize the reason for being stuck at level 1. Even though he understood magic better than anyone else, he couldn't use it. Soon enough, the scan completes, and he notices something weird and shocking. He doesn't actually have mana deficiency syndrome. It's not an illness, rather it was that someone sealed his circuit on purpose. Mana deficiency syndrome is an illness where one cannot circulate or accumulate magic. A mage can install up to 20 physical circuits on top of their mana circuit, the number of which determines their level, but due to this illness, the whole system is not established. But Oscar's circumstances are different. His physical circuit is not innately twisted, but it was done by someone on purpose. And if Oscar was really a genius, then he would have known that he doesn't have any illness. He then starts to look up for a diary from which he can learn more. According to Frank, Oscar was an alcoholic. But perhaps it was a persona he purposely created. He knew someone blocked his circuit and was after his life, so he acted like a playboy. And so, he realizes why Oscar gave in the temptation to the illegal elixir. In a situation where he cannot trust anyone, he had to undo the binding himself. And he believes that he can help Oscar's body by untying the knot. And among the books that he bought, he notices something peculiar. Reinterpretation of basic magic, which piques his interest. And upon reading, he is quite shocked, as Oscar has developed and theorized many new ways of using basic magic. He notes some of the magic concepts are similar to his, completely different to the idea and principle of the wind shield being a defensive skill. He also wrote how it can be used based on the situation. Besides that, there are several basic magic he created himself. Even though he could not have used magic himself, he still performed all these as mock experiments in his head. It makes him understand why he was hailed as a genius, even finding him similar to himself when it comes to theory. And he can tell from this book, he never gave up magic and worked harder than anyone else. At the end of the book, Oscar leaves a message, hoping his book blowing even the weakest of winds towards the White Tower from someone who is attempting their biggest challenge. He realizes that Oscar knew everything, but he had to do this all alone. He gets up from the chair, knowing Oscar as a young mage who did not break due to his cruel fate, and silently walked a lonely path, which leaves him with immense respect for Oscar, as he swears on his name as the Tower Master, that he would undo his knot that he couldn't untie, and will avenge him by making those who brutally broke his wings pay. We now see him walking around the greenhouse, and he doesn't even know why he is doing this either. Last thing he remembers was falling asleep because of being exhausted from untying the knot. Suddenly, he sees his old self there, along with his young disciples. He realizes that it's because of the dream curse that he has. The demon world's Viscount of Nightmare gave him this. Every time he sleeps, he is reminded of the past. He expected the curse to disappear after dying, but it's bind to his soul, he realizes. But he still considers himself lucky, because his dreams about his students aren't tainted, neither they are emotional. Oscar starts teaching the kids about different category of magic, enhancement, acceleration, balance, or special types. We are introduced to Lloyd Schultz, who asks if the White Tower purses harmonization type magic, which Oscar confirms. Shasha asks if each tower has different preference of magic type, and Oscar agrees, as they all have different traits. The Golden Tower likes speed, so they prefer acceleration, while the Red Tower believes fire to be the most important and uses enhancement type magic, and the Azure and White Tower both use balance type magic. Gilead wants acceleration type magic, as he finds slow things frustrating, and Oscar replies that one cannot choose it, they are born with it. Shasha asks, how can they know about it? And he replies that it's really simple, and asks her to extend her index finger and try to use this magic. But since it's the first time seeing this spell, she says it would take her time, and he asks her to not rush. Something starts to come out of her fingers, and Oscar tells her magic type is balanced as it's not lethal or too fast, which is the same as Oscar, which causes her to smile brightly knowing she is same as her master. Gilead goes on to do it as well, and he turns out to be acceleration type, which he wanted. Now it's time for Lloyd, who makes up in flower and comes out as special type. But he isn't much happy, asking if it can be changed, and Oscar replies, special mages are really rare, and questions his decision. And he replies that he wanted same magic as him, prompting Oscar to chuckle, and says that he was going to give Lloyd private lessons, but instead he would look into how to change their type perhaps. It prompts him to ask if he is going to have the most private lessons, and Oscar agrees, since special type mages will find it difficult to improve without a teacher, which prompts Lloyd to quickly change his stance about his magic on the promise that he would receive most number of lessons, which Oscar does, and in the present time, he remembers Lloyd being called the Promised Man. No matter how mature he wanted to be, he was still a child. Suddenly, an announcement is made, and Oscar wakes up, and it is for him, asking him to head to Lab 4202. He notes that he has now 8 circuits remaining to unlock. And additionally, while unlocking his physical circuits, he also gained 2 mana circuit lines and reached level 2. He never thought there will be a day when he would be happy upon reaching level 2, as Elder Maxim asks about his condition, and about his memories returning, and he confirms they are returning, hearing which makes him relieved. Elder Maxim was his junior back in the days. He entered the tower many years after Oscar. He was honest to a fault and diligent, someone he expected to have a bright future. He followed Oscar around calling him senior, and later called him Magic Tower Master, which he found cute. He giggles while remembering those memories while Maxim asks, why is he laughing? But regardless, he tells Oscar about the report he received that Gordon family's boss and acting head is killed, and asks if he knows anything about it, and he replies that he don't, but he is sure there is an appropriate reason as to why they were killed. It is because they tried to assassinate him, which Elder Maxim finds shocking. Oscar explains that the potion was poisoned and hands over him the ledger and the money used to kill him. Maxim realizes the reason he was bedridden was due to the poison as well, and Oscar further explains that they tried to kill him when he went there to ask. Reading the ledger, Maxim confirms the assassination and closes the case as self-defense on Oscar's part. He also asks for a personal favor, which is to meet the Tower Master, which Elder Maxim replies is not difficult since he used to often have discussion about magic with her. And he is surprised to learn that Oscar used to have discussion with Shasha, but Maxim tells him that he can only meet her at the minimum in 6 months. Oscar asks the reason for it since it would be time for the festival to start by then. He replies that she is out on a business trip to take on an important commission, but Oscar doesn't understand why a Tower Master is doing a mere commission, which he realizes the reason himself, because the High Mage is absent, and even Maxim finds it embarrassing. He then asks the level of Shasha, and Elder Maxim replies that she is a level 7 High Mage, which is again unexpected, since at her age, he was already at level 9, and with her talent, she should be able to reach at least level 8. Reading the report, Maxim found the corpse cut to be very clean and asks Oscar if he has been practicing attack magic, who replies that he trains when it comes to his mind, so he pardons him with that. As he is leaving, someone else enters, who turns out to be the Vice Master, and asks Maxim to be not strict with Oscar, but found himself too late for it. Maxim chuckles saying that he needs to scold him for getting into trouble, which Vice Master agrees with, but since he brought him here, he worried about Oscar. But regardless, Maxim knows that he could not have perfected his barrier magic with just 1 or 2 days of hard work and believes that he is working hard in secret, thinking that he must be studying much harder than he thought. Vice Master is glad to hear all that, and asks him to come to the Elder meeting, as Elder Fidelina is waiting for them. We now switch scenes to Oscar again, who is strolling in the greenhouse and finds it emptier than before, only for the gardener to take notice of him. He calls him young Sir Oscar, and Oscar asks for his identity. He introduces himself as Wilter. He manages the tower's facilities. They even had conversation before, so he is sad to hear him lose his memories. Only for Oscar to get concerned about rumors that his memory is lost spreading too far. But he asks Wilter about calling him young Master Oscar, and he replies that he has been working here since previous Tower Master, who was Great Sir Oscar. And so, Oscar finds the naming a great way to differentiate between them, and asks him to continue his conversation buddy. But Wilter replies that it would be difficult since he would leaving the tower soon. It's been 40 years since he is working here, and Oscar asks if there is any issue. He replies that only is left in this department, and there is a reason he held out for this long. It was because of what Oscar said one day during his appointment ceremony that everyone residing in this tower is needed, so live with that pride that you're part of the White Tower. Which makes Oscar feel a little embarrassed, and Wilter replies that since then he always believed himself to be a part of the tower. And because of that he is quitting, but Oscar doesn't understand what he means. He explains that the tower is not in a good situation right now, especially glaring from the facilities. The finances aren't what they used to before. Next month, it would be 40 years for him, and Oscar asks if it's because of his long service reward. All members of White Tower, excluding the mages, receives long service rewards on their 20th and 40th years of service. They get 200,000 bells, enough to buy a house in large city. Wilter knows current tower cannot afford that, so he is quitting because they would need to put the life of many people on the line to get that much. And he cannot accept the reward thinking about that, since he considers this place his hometown. Hearing which, Oscar didn't knew that it was that bad, and he thought that Azure Tower was doing outrageous things for money. He is no one to undermine their work since they have been able to earn that much and became the best of today. On the other hand, he only has titles, which angers him. Suddenly, Wilter shouts his name, and he snaps back to reality, asking why is he clenching his fist so tightly. Oscar asks, when is he planning to leave, and he replies that it's in 2 weeks, and ties a cloth on Oscar's wound. Who again wishes for Wilter to be his conversation buddy, and when Wilter again tries to say that he is going to leave, Oscar replies that he don't have to, because he would make sure of it that he don't have. thinking that there must be a method to earn lots of money, so this all will never happen again. And now, even though he said that, he don't know what he would do. He thinks of research, lectures, commissions, but the payments would take him a while, and he is just a level 2 mage. And so, he picks up the newspaper to find something to rake in big money. Suddenly, he notices something surprising in the paper. We now switch scenes to Vice Master's room, where a lady is quite angry about the whole embezzlement situation and Maxim tries to argue against it. The lady turns out to be the treasurer of the tower, Fidelina, as Maxim tries to convince her that the culprit is reflecting on his actions. But she is still pissed, believing that it would turn into a habit, and he replies that she don't have to worry about that, because there isn't much to steal from anyways, angering her even more. Fidelina demands for Oscar to be put in isolation training, and Maxim sees no point in putting a level 1 mage in it, while Vice Master is quite in despair seeing two elder converse like this. But he agrees with Maxim that isolation training would be too hard, it would be torture, and instead suggests to have him personally pay 3 times the amount, which is not a satisfactory amount for Fidelina. She sighs, knowing they have to make another decision soon as they have little money left. She suggests to sell some equipments from the faculties they don't use, so they can at least get by for a few months, or they would have to shut down. But Vice Master is not in favor, as it's a place where mages come together to study magic and share knowledge. There is no fresh air in closed room, so they cannot sell their future to satiate their hunger for today. But Fidelina questions if they even have a future, because they already waited for 20 years, angering Maxim. She tells Vice Master to accept it now. Even if there is a genius that might save their tower, they won't come to them. Just as he is about to say something, they get a knock on the door, annoying Fidelina, who says they are in a meeting, but Vice Master allows them in. And it turns out to be none other than Oscar. Vice Master asks Oscar, "What is it?" and he replies that he had a suggestion, and requests them to let him start a business, surprising Fidelina. She calls him funny for trying to embezzlement research funds a few days ago, and now coming here to start a business. While she is seething behind, Oscar hands over a newspaper, the Vince state which had to go on a lockdown because of the terrible flu outbreak. Vice Master saw the news as well, and heard that it might be Cadena flu, and it's terrible news if it's that. Since there is no cure for it, in the past, White Tower came up with a vaccine, but the recipe was lost 20 years ago. Oscar agrees, adding that even Azure Tower cannot replicate it, so he wanted to start with that. Vice Master doesn't understand at first, and Oscar speaks up that he wants to sell vaccines for the Cadena flu. It's something that White Tower had monopoly over, so he intends to revive it. Fidelina doesn't believe it's all worth listening to, since the magic towers and all pharmaceutical companies have pots tons of labor and money into it, yet they couldn't come up with a cure. So, how can a 20-year-old kid like him can make it? Oscar agrees that they did fail, and that he is a 20-year-old kid, but also adds the fact that he is a genius. It angers Fidelina, who makes his ear bleed by chewing his ear about the whole embezzlement fiasco and stealing 700,000 bells. But Vice Master steps up, telling her that Oscar is here to suggest an official investment opportunity for the White Tower. Even if she is in charge of the finance, she is being too rude, which she quickly realizes and apologizes. Oscar was wondering, why does she hate him too much? But now he knows it's because she is a treasurer, and it makes sense since he didn't do anything worthwhile for the last 2 years. But this body's owner and him are different, and asks Vice Master to consider it, as he is certain about it. Vice Master asks if he is certain that it's Cadena flu, and he replies, he is, and asks him to look at the page 2 of the paper. It states that Archbishop Baldwin suddenly changed his plans while on pilgrimage, and Oscar calls it out as strange for Archbishop to stay in Serin for a month for prayers of blessing, since they only stayed a month in big cities until now. The El Terra Order worships the Mother of Earth. There are only 7 archbishops in the order. They are supposed to be incorruptible, but the reality is far from it. In order to become cardinal, those second in power needs a tremendous amount of campaign funds. They are allowed to stay in a estate they visit on pilgrimage for a month, but it is only when they are meeting nobles and merchants and getting money from them. But Serin, it used to be a large city in the past, but is getting smaller day by day, yet he is staying here for a whole month. Maxim also finds it strange and thought that it was for prayers of blessing. But Oscar finds it even more strange, since how can there be blessing for a barren land? The pilgrimage route for El Terra members are already chosen for them: Serin, Mosque, Melbourne, and after that is Vince. The Archbishop spent a month in the previous city and would stay for a month in Serin as well, and also in Melbourne and Greenwell, which is almost as if he is avoiding visiting Vince as much as possible, which rings bell in all of their heads. If an accident occurs during their pilgrimage, the people of El Terra Order say that they have angered the goddess of Earth, and it would basically be death for someone trying to become cardinal. Maxim confirms if Oscar believes he is avoiding Vince and stalling for time due to Cadena flu, and he agrees. But Fidelina simply passes it off as a pretty good analysis. Vice Master also understands what is he saying, but still doesn't allow to officially sponsor him, surprising him. Since they won't be able to fund the other mages if they do that, Oscar tries to argue, but the Vice Master is not finished, and offers to personally invest his own money into his business. Fidelina tries to speak up, but he tells her that it's alright. But it's only 30,000 bells, and asks if it's going to be enough, and Oscar thinks for a bit, and quickly comes to the conclusion that it's nowhere near enough. Fast forward, and he is in the potion production chamber. This time going for his plan B, he plans to make a vaccine sample with the money he got from Vice Master and get money from Archbishop, since he is the one who is in most trouble due to this flu. Because it's best to rip money off someone who is desperate. And he puts on his glasses while saying that it's time for him warm up. A bit later, and we see him waiting on the potion brewing. And when the time is up, he puts it in the bottle and finds the results not too bad. He made this energy drink first as practice, but now he feels that he was worried over nothing. Meanwhile, we see Frank is here with lots of heavy stuff, complaining about his breaking back. Oscar asks if he got all medicinal herbs, and he replies that he can check, and asks if he got anything to drink since he feels that he is about to pass out, and Oscar offers him a recovery potion. But Frank knows it's pricey but takes it regardless, and upon drinking it, he feels refreshed. Moving on the herbs, Oscar notes that their quality is excellent, and Frank replies that it's because he picked all of them by hand, making even the vendor mad, causing Oscar to jokingly tell him to become a merchant instead of a mage, which he replies that he plans to once the tower goes broke. Hearing which, Oscar gives him some light taps on his head, only to apologize soon after for not being able to control himself. Regardless, Frank asks for his next instruction as Elder Fidelina told him to help him. Hearing which, Oscar smiles, noting that she was being so mean to him moments ago up front, and asks Frank to start moving the ingredients. Though he doesn't find any real need of any assistant. But he found something written, that the White Tower is currently filled with numerous problem children. They are all exceptionally talented with few screws loose, and if they get their act together, they can greatly contribute to Tower's strength. And Frank Sirius is one of them. Oscar assumes that it wasn't just a baseless claim since a very perceptive person gave that claim, and finds it to be the perfect chance to confirm it. Frank asks if aren't all of these herbs poisonous. Black lilies of the valley, red camellias, ghost mushrooms, mira leaves. And Oscar replies, just because they are, doesn't mean they cannot be used in medicine. He asks if he knows what to do before using them, and he replies that they have to boil them in water for about 12 hours to detoxify them. But Oscar explains a problem with this method. The nutrients also go away during this process. He then asks him if he knows about dumplings from Yin Dynasty, and he replies that he tried some before, and Oscar replies, they use a tool known as steamer to make them, which if they use as well, they can keep most of the nutrients. They can extract about 98% of their effects, hearing which surprises Frank, who believes monopolizing the potion market should be possible, which Oscar agrees with. As he puts them into steamer, Frank asks if it's the end of the detoxifying process, and Oscar replies that it only puts them in a softened state, which makes them easier to detoxify. The actual detoxifying process will begin now, and we see Oscar starting to use magic, air drain on the ingredients. With this purple steam, they just need to extract the toxins from it separately. And he asks Frank to take a look, as we see a green part of it is extracted from the steam. And now the rest of the steam should not have any toxins in it, so they need to only mix them with the right ratio, and with this, he finishes up the remedy for Cadena flu. He asks Frank, wasn't it easy to make, who doesn't seems to think so, but he asks him to try it. But Frank is unconfident in it. He cannot even use two different magic simultaneously yet, but he doesn't want to tell Oscar this. But regardless, he starts with the air drain spell, and Oscar notes that his mana control is little unstable, but not bad. But that is all. He asks Frank is something wrong, and he replies that he cannot use dual cast yet. He believes that you have to be level 3 or 4 to understand that principle, but Oscar tells him that he would teach him. Frank is surprised that Oscar is going to teach him just like that, who tells him to try thinking of it as setting partition in his mind. On the left side of the partition, use Magic A, and on the right side, use Magic B. He asks him to try since there is nothing for him to lose. And much to his surprise, he is able to learn it quickly, even finding it easy and wondering, why did they hide this technique for so long? And Oscar replies, it's because they are greedy. They didn't want to teach this technique, they put so much effort in learning to their junior for free, and it became a tradition. But in the battlefield, such a tradition is nothing but a hindrance. To survive, sharing techniques and discussions were needed every day. And the White Tower now needs interactive teaching and the exchange of knowledge. He also notes that Frank did a good job speeding it up and compliments him for being talented, since he did not expected him to get it on the first try. But he replies that it's only because he explained it so well, but Oscar teases him for looking at him mad earlier, causing him to quickly change the topic, and Oscar also sighs with a smile. Now a few hours later, we see they have made 514 bottles in total. Suddenly, Elder Maxim arrives, bearing a bad news for him. A paper shows that Azure Tower is visiting Archbishop Baldwin, along with their pharmaceutical company. Maxim thinks they are a little late now, and Oscar also realizes that Azure Tower isn't sitting idle without a plan. Both Frank and Maxim thinks if they get the contract first, then their remedy would be rendered useless. Maxim gives up and cheers on Frank, saying they just got unlucky, but Oscar says that it's not over yet. Since if he remembers correctly, Cadena flu is currently classified as a B-rank disaster. So there is one thing they could try in this case, and he asks Elder Maxim if his speed is faster than most wagons. Meanwhile, we switch scenes to a certain lodge in Surin, where the Archbishop is informed about the guest arriving and he permits them to let in. The guests greets him, introducing themselves, Moira Main, a level 5 mage, along with their managing director of the pharmaceutical company, Neil Bryan. Baldwin greets them back and asks him to take a seat, and asks about the production of the remedy, and Moira replies that it's going well. And Baldwin asks for the date, when it's going to be finished, and Moira replies that it still has to undergo clinical trials. Neil adds that with successful results, they should be able to get permission from the Empire's Food and Drug Department. But Moira also informs that the trials won't end in a day or two, and Baldwin asks the date for launch of the medicine, which Moira promises to finish in half a year, only for Baldwin to freak out since he has to leave for Vince in 4 months. Suddenly, they get another knock on the door, with the guards informing Baldwin that another mage has come to visit him, and he asks to let them in as well. And then turns to Azure Tower, questioning, why did they not inform if one more person is coming, but they reply that they don't have anyone else accompanying them, making Baldwin wonder, who is this person then? While entering, the person comments that if he remembers correctly, LCIA was the greeting for the order. And we see it's Oscar, who uses the Order's greeting and introduces himself as a level 2 mage from the White Tower, Oscar Crusian, and that he is here to make him a good offer. Baldwin is surprised to see the White Tower here and asks for his purpose of visit. And Oscar replies that he is here regarding the sale of Cadena flu cure. Baldwin calls it perfect timing, as the other two are here for that as well. Oscar asks if he is too late then? But Baldwin with a disappointing sigh replies, not at all, since they haven't prepared a cure yet, which Oscar finds relieving to hear, and offers to negotiate immediately if needed. Moira calls it out as a lie, believing that those of the White Tower doesn't have the technology to develop a cure. Baldwin does agree and asks for Oscar's last name, who almost replies with his original one, but afterwards, Baldwin asks if he really does have the cure, to which he replies that they want Dare to lie to the Archbishop and shows him a sample as well. Seeing which, Baldwin replies that if they do end up going forward with the deal, how much can they produce and until when? Only for Moira to jump in with his raised voice, which makes Baldwin pissed as well, who warns to not yell at him as he was the one who came unprepared, and Moira tries to argue that it's because they don't have the permission from Empire's Food and Drug Administration. From which, he also brings up a point and asks Oscar if he got approval from the Empire's FDA, and he declines. So Moira turns to Baldwin to argue that White Tower's situation is not different from them. They can even mass produce from all over the continent once they get the approval. And he should also remember that it's White Tower they are talking about, as considering Azure Tower's long history, they can provide with the best cure. Oscar gets a bit angry seeing Moira yapping that Azure Tower has a long history and comments that it's funny he is saying such thing in front of a White Tower's mage. And it angers Moira, who warns Oscar to take his words back. But he instead questions which magic tower was established first, and Moira argues if he is really going to be petty over just a 5-year difference. causing Oscar to reply that it's that 5-year difference that Azure Tower Master wishes to close, but it's a gap that will never close, not even in 10,000 years. Since it's how history works, and he must not forget that White Tower was the one who had the monopoly over the potion market 20 years ago. But Moira tries to shrug it off as past no one remembers, only to feel something immediately. As we see Oscar starting to emit a dark aura upon hearing that, leaving them both anxious, thinking that aura cannot be something that is coming from a level 2 mage. But regardless, Oscar plans to remind them of the long history, but Moira doesn't understand what he is talking about. Suddenly, one Baldwin's worker rushes in with a phone, saying that it's an urgent call for him. And when he asks, "Who is it?" the worker replies that it's from the Lord of Vince, who thanks Baldwin for his immeasurable kindness, but Baldwin doesn't understand what is going on. Lord of Vince explains that it's thanks for sending the cure for Cadena flu, only for Baldwin to get even more confused and shocked upon hearing that. He was told by the White Tower's elder that he prepared it in secret with them, which is why he is thanking him, and all the patients are cured in a matter of few hours. In complete shock, he asks if there is any side effects, and Lord of Vince replies, "So far there isn't any," and asks for a second batch. He tried asking this to the White Tower's elder, who told them that it is up to Lord Bishop, which makes Baldwin reply that they would send the second batch as soon as it's ready, and once again he thanks Baldwin for it. He then asks Oscar if this was his doing, who agrees. Moira tries to argue that it's against the law and Oscar should be punished, but he replies, "Not at all," and mocks Moira for not knowing the rules properly, and asks if he knows any laws regarding war, but Moira asks him to not change the topic. Oscar explains that 20 years ago, the weapon that took the most lives of the people in the war against the demons was a pandemic. Even with the mages producing quick treatments, it took too long for them to get approved, causing His Majesty to add a statement, stating that treatments meant for the wounded in cases of war will be categorized as special treatment, and will not be affected by the laws of the Empire's FDA. But Moira argues that they are not at war right now, and Oscar further explains, there are 3 cases where a situation is considered a war. First, when there is a war going on against another species or another nation. Second, where there is a revolution. And lastly, when there is a disaster above B rank, and the Cadena flu is a B-class disaster. Hence there is no need to follow the FDA's laws. Neil gets up and says they can do what White Tower did as well. They would even send the treatment to Vince immediately, but Baldwin replies that they don't seem to understand the situation. The race was over the moment the White Tower's treatment reached Vince, and the Lord of Vince also thinks that he is working with the White Tower, so he cannot turn around and say that he is working with Azure Tower now. Neil tries to offer a lower price, only for Baldwin to get angry, for even thinking that he would trade his image with money, and they try to quickly apologize. But Baldwin has had enough and asks them both to leave, so they quickly get up. While leaving, Moira tells Oscar that he would make him pay for it, while Oscar sighs, thinking they must have some book of villain dialogue on hand or something. Though, he also informs Moira that he already registered the patent for the treatment and fastened to the palace, shocking Moira even more, as Oscar continues that he would have to pay to sell the treatment they made, otherwise they can throw them all out, which makes him even more pissed as he storms out in anger. And while Neil is walking past by Oscar, he smells something, causing him to quickly turn back towards him, remembering what Gordon's family's boss said. The culprit had a unique scent, a refreshing, clear smell of mint, causing Oscar to make a much serious expression. And as they leave, Baldwin starts to laugh and asks Oscar to have a seat, so they can finally talk. Baldwin now wants to discuss the price with him, and puts out that Azure Tower wanted 2 million bells for it. And so, Oscar asks for 5 million instead, shocking Baldwin. Fast forward to White Tower a few hours later, we hear someone shouting, "What is this?" And it turns out to be Fideline, who has her eye pop out upon seeing a check for 10 million bells. She quickly hugs Oscar from behind, saying that she knew he could do it, and Elder Maxim also commends him for the work. The Vice Master is shocked as well, since not even Archbishop should be able to give this much. And Oscar replies that there were additional fees in this, prompting the Vice Master to ask, what fees, and he replies that it's advertisement fees. The White Tower's official announcement should be that just as Archbishop Baldwin received a revelation, foreseeing the breakout of Cadena flu, they were able to quickly prepare antidotes. For Archbishop, who is aiming to become Cardinal, after receiving a revelation from Mother Earth, the title would be even more seductive to him. And he also liked the contract that he paid 3 million bells, more than they asked for, and in exchange, Oscar said that they would send the antidotes within a week. Vice Master calls it incredible. The disciplinary action against Oscar was for him to bring 3 times the amount, but he bought 400 times that sum. And so, he asks if there is any objection in ending his disciplinary action, to which Fidelina replies, not at all. He also tells Oscar to tell them if he needs support, and he replies that they need to gather level 4 mages or above, and as many as possible. And so Vice Master tells Fidelina to put out an announcement within the tower. Fidelina asks, what should it say? And he replies that the production lab is looking for mages level 4 or above, and those partake will get paid, and will be given a meat side dish at every meal. This announcement causes an uproar, and we see tons of mages have gathered, with Frank calling it a rare sight. Oscar claps his hand and tells everyone to listen up, but they ignore and keeps on talking. And so, Oscar uses his soundbind spell again, leaving all of them to wonder, what is that? He asks everyone to pay attention, telling them the reason they have gathered, which is to make antidote for the Cadena flu, for which he needs their help. Some of them are skeptical, seeing the genius bowing down to them, and thinks of him making an antidote a scam, leaving Oscar confused at their reaction. So he turns to Frank to confirm if they don't like him, and he asks Oscar to think about everything he has done up until now. He starts explaining that his personality is annoying and he is arrogant. He wasted Magic Tower's resources and didn't do anything, leaving even Oscar to think if he was really that shitty. A girl comes up and greets Oscar, wanting to ask him something. How would they make the medicine since the White Tower's production methods were all lost? And he simply replies that he recovered it, and the girl asks if the effects of the antidote have been proven. And he agrees. Even the contract with the order has been made, causing the girl to reply that its value must be worth a fortune, and if the production were leaked externally, meat side dishes would become a joke. And questions, why does he wish to share such precious information with them? And Oscar replies that, being honest, he don't even know why they all are still at the White Tower. The girl gets pissed hearing that and asks if this is his attitude when asking from a favor from his seniors. She also starts to leave, saying that she doesn't understand his intention for saying that, but there is no one here who would stay after hearing that. Oscar replies that he knows what exactly all of them have gave up for the White Tower, hearing which she stops for a moment and looks back. Oscar continues, level 5 mage, Lena White, 25 years old. Because of her talent and judgment, 7 corporations, including the Red Tower, tried to scout her, but she rejected all of them. He continues on the same for other mages who are present here, all of them talented in their own rights, surprising them. The last one being Cephia Rose, who has incredible creative alchemy abilities, and when the Golden Tower tried to recruit her, she rejected them. Other than those he named, there are others who received similar offers. And if an offer like that came to him, he don't know if he could have refused it. Yet none of them abandoned this place. Lena asks if the Elder knew about all of those secret meetings, and Oscar agrees, replying that they had no choice but to pretend they didn't because they didn't want to burden them. The White Tower is currently undergoing the coldest winter they have faced, and in this situation where they could have gone to somewhere warmer, they chose to stay here. And if he cannot trust people like that, who could he trust? He then starts with his act of fake crying, saying that it's okay if they don't like it. Them 2 low-level mages would just have to struggle to complete it. He tells Frank to hurry up, since they are doing with only 2 of them, only for Lena to step in and take up the googles along with others as well. Frank is surprised at Oscar to be able to convince people with his words alone, and he replies, a dream like that isn't bad. He continues to tell everyone that the meat in the menu isn't pork, making everyone worry if it's chicken or even rat meat. But when he announces that it's going to be beef, everyone rejoice in excitement, and with that, the vaccines and antidotes were successfully created, reaching 140% of their original goal. A week later, Oscar notices petals in the greenhouse and thinks it's Old Man Wilter. Noting that he must be back, he is sure that Vice Master dragged him back even. He then starts up reading the newspaper, which is filled with things about White Tower and him, and their recent accomplishment, which makes him think that things are going according to his plans. And just then, Frank comes running, informing Oscar excitedly that vaccine orders are pouring in. The Northern Territories and even the Imperial family have given orders, making Oscar happy. But Frank also says that the rush would cool down, and Oscar agrees, calling him smart. Frank knows that once the vaccinations are over, no one would buy it, and next outbreak won't happen until years later. Oscar replies that they don't need to worry about money, He has prepared a potion that would always be in demand, and Frank is excited to know that Oscar has a whole plan and asks if it's Star Tier's potion that he always heard about, and Oscar declines. Because he plans to sell low and mid-level potions, it's not time for that potion yet. It is the most famous of the White Tower's recover potions, said to even bring the dead back to life, and Oscar knows that it would create incredible chaos if it's released. But making it right now would cause hyena-like people to try and steal its method. He was safe this time since he used Archbishop as a shield, so he plans to increase White Tower's power first. And now, he asks Frank to go and gather materials first, which he really doesn't want to. Oscar wants Lantis leaves, Python steams. Frank is surprised to know there is more and informs that they would be hard to get, and Oscar doesn't get what he is talking about since they are supposed to be Serin's speciality, but Frank doesn't know how long ago was that true. Since it's been a while, the herb fields that grew them all went under, leaving Oscar shocked. Fast forward, and we see Oscar dragging out Frank all the way to the boonies to check if it's real. Frank questions if there was really a need to go to such place where carriage cannot even reach, and Oscar asks him to hold on for a bit. They have come to 10 miles, so there is only few left, and Frank asks, why is he using a unit that disappeared years ago? Oscar is once again surprised hearing that, and Frank replies that distance has been unified by meters, and pounds also switched to grams. He is shocked hearing that, even though he knew that they were a bit difficult to calculate, but it was half the fun and praise for its departure. They finally arrive at a small cabin as Frank knocks and asks if anyone is there, and we see someone peeking out the door, asking if they walked all the way here. Frank agrees, since carriages only take them to the entrance, only for Oscar to notice something coming from behind them. And we see there is a whole convoy here, crushing the man's fields with their cars. Their boss, who looks like a typical douche, asks the landowner if he is feeling like selling his land today. The old man comes out, and the guy asks him to stop being stubborn already, and the old man replies that even if he gives him a castle made of mithril, he won't budge. The businessman is introduced as Dever Paywall, who tells him to not play hard to get with him, since even if he lives like this, no one would recognize him when he dies. And the old man is herbalist, Ivan, who tells Dever that it's none of his business. Dever again tries to advise him to sell the land and enjoy his life comfortably, since when the factories are made around this land, the prices would hit rock bottom. But Ivan finds it funny, since as long as he is here, permission for the construction of factories would never come. Hearing which, Dever asks his boys to let's go instead. But before leaving, he knows that he trampled on some herbs on his way and throws him a bundle of cash for that, and leaves with his whole convoy while again destroying his herbs. Dever asks his men, what are those White Tower people doing here? And he replies that they are probably here for the herbs, as they apparently made lots of money from the vaccine. Dever doesn't know how much they made and asks about it, and he hands over him a newspaper, saying that it's quite a lot. Reading which, he is left shocked and hits his men on the head for not telling him about it earlier. He is worried of the old man asking support from the White Tower, which would give enough support to last another few years, which he cannot let happen since it's getting harder for him to keep up with the loans. And so, he asks one of his men to contact those mercenaries that he contacted before to commission them. He asks, what kind of commission, and Dever replies, the obvious kind. He tries to argue that Ivan is a recognized person, but Dever replies that they can just kill him and have him marked as missing. Land without an owner will be auctioned. Even thought it might be a little suspicious, but Dever has someone supporting him as well. His henchman asks, what if the White Tower mages stays with him? And Dever orders to kill them as well. But his henchman is worried that it would get problematic if main towers get involved. And on top of that, there is Ivan, but Dever doesn't believe much could happen. He thinks that the term for main tower is already old. The White Tower is already going bust. Fast forward to night. Frank recalls the old man as a good person. He let them sleep and even fed them, and Oscar agrees. We go back to some time ago where Ivan told them to sleep here since it's getting late already. Frank asked him if it's okay, and he replies that he has loyalty when it comes to the White Tower. From this, Oscar seems to get reminded of something, and Frank asks about the guy earlier, and he replies that it's Dever Paywall, someone who would do anything to get his goal. 3 years ago, he began to buy up all of the land in this area and obtained everything except for this land. Countless herbalists left Serin or went missing and didn't return, but Frank doesn't understand why would he go so far, and Ivan replies that he wants to make this place a large factory area. Oscar asks, how did he manage to hold out? And he replies that Dever cannot touch him. He is the one at disadvantage. because he is recognized as a national treasure by the imperial family. And Frank realizes the reason for why he was able to hold out for so long, but Oscar asks, why didn't he just sell this land and get incredible wealth? Which Ivan replies is something really obvious. It's because he loves this land. This place has been his home since the moment he was born, and it would be till his final moment. Frank also found it cute how he got embarrassed and rushed inside after saying that. Frank finds the stars really bright and expresses his jealousy, but Oscar asks, what is he jealous of? And he replies that he wants to know how it feels like to live such a brightly shining life. But he is sure that a genius like Oscar cannot relate to it. But Oscar commends him for being outstanding himself, and he thanks him, even if they are just empty words. But he insists that they are not empty. He is not someone who is good at giving empty praises in the first place. He also doesn't understand why did young Oscar said that Frank was a problem child, as Frank once again comments how pretty the stars are, causing Oscar to reply that before they could see the stars in the middle of Surin as well, while thinking that they cannot see them now due to the bright city lights. The inconvenience back then was romantic. Frank asks if they can really revive the Surin herb industry, and Oscar doesn't find it impossible. But in the middle of talking, Oscar suddenly notices something and Frank asks, what got him like that? And he replies that there is someone, for in total. But Frank is unable to feel anything. Oscar realizes that they must not be here for any good reason, and asks Frank to get up, as they need to prepare to greet their guests. We see one of the assassin, who talks about how Dever was refusing them before about killing Ivan, mocking for being scared of the aftermath. The old man replies that he don't care for the reason. They give them money so they would do their job, but the guy finds the old man to be too passive despite having a large bounty on their head in this area. But their leader arrives and tells them to stop the chatter. And we learn that they are the Gunman Jack gang, whose leader warns them to be careful since there might be a mage, but the old man doesn't take the White Tower too seriously, while the other one finds it fun to fight a mage. Green Hair asks his leader if he can go in, and upon opening the gate, he finds it all quiet inside and wonders if the old man is already asleep. He goes near the bed, thinking that it's a boringly easy job, only to realize something, which quickly prompts him to run back outside. And we see a hand peeking out the blanket, calling the guy uselessly quick-witted as Oscar charges up a wind bullet and shoots him right through the head, while finding the spell quite useful as well. It's a spell which young Oscar wrote as one of the spells in his book. It's an attack spell which reinterprets the principle behind a firearm through White Tower's wind magic. He also finds the killing power quite high and wonders if there are only 3 left now. But outside, he only sees 2 people standing, with their leader asking him, what did he do to Max? And Oscar replies that he is sleeping inside, but he won't wake up for a while, or perhaps eternally. The old man calls Max a pathetic person for letting his guard down like that, and their leader asks Oscar to just tell him the location of Ivan, and they would leave. Oscar notes they are not falling for his provocation and are avoiding unnecessary fights, and tells them to just go with their bad feelings. And so, the red hair asks the old man to kill Oscar, who quickly rushes on to do so, only for Oscar to block the attack with his wind shield. And his attack bounces off. Oscar quickly discards his shield and moves in close to attack him, which makes the old guy smirk as he calls Oscar quite impressive. And as Oscar is planning for his attack, the old man splits his glaive in 2, commenting that he must not be expecting it, and attacks him with both of them at once. But Oscar also creates 2 wind bullets then, and calls his attack more boring than he thought. The old man is surprised at Oscar, since he didn't got flustered even though he caught him off guard and even shot in such sophisticated manner. Oscar doesn't find anything cool about his unique weapon. It's not even new in his eyes. But suddenly, he feels something and backs off, surprising the old man as well. And we see a firearm is aimed at him, which is shot right through the old man's head. Oscar tries to create a shield to block it, but it gets penetrated by it and grazes him a little. We see it's their leader, who finds it disappointing, since he planned to kill him when his guard was down a bit. Oscar asks if that old man wasn't his colleague, and he replies that he was his subordinate, which he can always get another. This is one of the reasons Oscar finds these criminals terrible and asks about his weapon, referring to it as a toy. To which the guy replies that this weapon would be sad to hear him say that, but the only thing he should know that it's really expensive. But Oscar currently guesses the 3 spells imbued in that weapon: acceleration, enhancement, and penetration. The guy is quite surprised hearing that and asks Oscar, how did he came to know that? And he replies, because he couldn't block it. The guy calls him arrogant, but but also commends for the talent to back it up, and offers to recruit him with a good pay, but Oscar obviously declines, and when asked for reason, he replies that he feels he would get betrayed by him, which the red hair finds fair enough. And so, they once again resumes their battle. A bit later, and we see Oscar finding himself in a pathetic state for a former tower master. He was escaping the bullets, and now has taken a hiding spot. Since his wind bullets are slower than his bullets, it would be disadvantageous for him to go for an all-out battle, and he only has half of his mana left. And the only opening he can see is the window of time where he is reloading. After shooting 2 bullets, his attacks stop while he is reloading, and after 1.4 seconds, he attacks again. We see him trying to search for Oscar in the fields while he notes that he only has 1 bullet left, so he has to finish things up in 1.4 seconds. He quickly uses his accelerate spell to launch himself towards him, and the guy is able to quickly detect him as well. He quickly points his weapon at Oscar, commenting that a human cannot beat his trinity. And as the bullet is shot at him, the guy smirks, thinking that it's over already, only for the bullet to glide across the surface of the shield, and Oscar quickly makes use of this opportunity. The guy is surprised to see Oscar dodge the bullet, and wonders, how is that possible? But before he can get his answer, we see Oscar is already at his face, pointing his wind bullet right on his head, and shoots right through it, commenting that he wouldn't understand even if he explained. Regardless, he goes on to pick up his weapon, finding it quite annoying. He does find his weapon amazing, since it was quite difficult for him to deal with after all. He used friction reduction and internal durability enhancement on his shield, making the exterior flexible and interior sturdy, which was the bullet cannot penetrate it and slipped. And if that didn't work, he would be lying dead, so he plans to research on how to use his magic against weapons when he gets back to the tower. But even before that, he needs to safely rescue Ivan and save Frank. There were 4 people he sensed in the beginning, and since he dealt with 3, he hopes and wishes for Frank to not get caught and hold on for a bit till he gets there. We see Frank instructing Ivan to go ahead, who is concerned about him, but Frank replies that he is quite strong, and he cannot fight properly if he is here, so he would catch up later. And so, the elder quickly leaves, prompting the guy to ask if he is done with his farewell, but Frank asks, why is he not chasing him and instead coming for him? The guy chuckles and asks Frank, who is he and if he sent the old man away thinking that he would chase after him, so he could survive by himself. That old man is his goal, but he was really curious and wanted to know what is so special about people from those magic tower that everyone is so scared, which is why he wants to kill him first and quickly jumps to attack Frank. But Frank uses Wind Cutter to send a wind slash towards him, which the guy easily cuts down with his sword, and stabs his sword right through Frank's chest, calling it too easy, while mocking the 4 main magic towers. But suddenly, the guy notices something, noting that a sword piercing a heart shouldn't feel this light, and finds something strange as Frank grabs his sword, and quickly slices his neck with his Wind Cutter, leaving him to bleed while apologizing, stating that he has a bit of special constitution, as we see a part of his body has turned into wind. The guy finally drops dead, while we see Oscar was hiding behind a tree and watching Frank. He notes that he is a special mage and the god of wind at that. To him it's shocking that Frank would have a magic that would let him change part of his body into wind. He finally comes out of hiding, noting that physical attacks don't work on him, and it's an OP skill that cannot be faced unless you use magic or sword chi. Even he, the Tower Master, only saw this rare magic within old books. And those records were only about the 7th Magic Tower Master, who was a special mage, saying that it was his innate magic. He never knew that Frank would receive his god of wind, and as he calls out to him, he gets shook from the suddenness of it. He asks, when did he get here, and he replies that he was worried, but commends him for good job. He also asks him about Ivan, and where did he leave him, and Frank suddenly remembers about him and quickly calls out to him frantically. Oscar notes that if he just trains Frank well, he has the potent ability that would be as powerful as dozens of high mages, and he guides Frank towards Ivan by sensing his energy. Now in the morning, Ivan thanks them both, as if it weren't for them, he wouldn't have been able to see the morning sun, but Frank tries to say that it was all Oscar, who denies, since he missed one of the swordsmen. Without him, there would have been trouble, and hearing such compliment makes him fluster. But Oscar asks if it's all over now, and Ivan replies, not exactly, since Dever is not someone who would give up that easily. He would try another method. Frank questions about Dever's obsession with this land, and Ivan replies that this is the best land in Sarin, that is the biggest, and in the perfect location. The fertility of Saran's land has greatly declined over 8 years. It was the result of Western region's magic engineering item production factories sending their wastewater and pollutants through the Balf River. And if Saran's land fertility can never be recovered, he cannot even grow herbs. Oscar raises a question for Ivan. It's about the loyalty that he must keep to the White Tower. Is it related to the 4th Magic Tower Master? Renaud Ayuz, and Ivan is surprised that Oscar knows about it. Frank asks about it, and Ivan explains that long ago, perception of herbalists was quite different. Some even used to call them witches, since most of them took herbs which they didn't knew the effects of and sold them. So herbalists used to avoid the gazes of others and lived a nomad life. Then, a savior appeared in front of them and took them in. He was the one famous for his insight, the White Tower's 4th master, Renaud Ayuz, who told them to come to Sarin. That place would become home eternally for their descendants. And the rest of the line is completed by Oscar, that they will not be looked down on anyone there. Ivan is surprised to know him saying something so touching, and he never heard those exact words, and Oscar replies that he read it in a storybook, but he actually got it from an old book given to Tower Masters. And after all that, the herbalists all gathered up in Sarin. It was the first time these nomads had a home. The White Tower gifted his ancestors a home and a pride, so they cannot abandon them. Hearing which, Oscar quickly bows down to him and thanks him for the hard work, assuring that the White Tower will be with him from now onwards. Ivan asks if there is some method, and he replies that if Imperial family found out about the attack, they would deal with it immediately, but he is worried if Imperial family would move on time, and Oscar assures that they would move faster than light. And when he asks, how? Oscar smirks and replies because today is the day he is signing a contract for the Cadena flu treatment with them. We switch scenes to Dever's office, who is panicking due to the botched-up job and is planning on running away, only to hear a loud knock on his door. And we see the Imperial forces are here. Their head introduces himself as Senior Superintendent, Walker, and shows him a notice of his arrest. The charges are for attempted murder, blackmail, illegal property, and so on. Dever tries to argue that they got the wrong person, as he is just a businessman, but Walker tells him to shut his mouth and arrests him. Dever realizes it's not something he can handle alone, but if he contacts that person, he would be able to find some way out of this. And so, he asks if he would let him smoke at least one cigar before arrest, and Walker stares silently, and asks his men to handcuff him and drag him away. Dever shouts that he don't know who is behind him, and Walker replies that he indeed don't. But the one behind him is the Emperor himself, so whoever it is, he has to be more important than him, leaving Dever scared. He then takes his cigar and smokes it himself, finding the criminals taste to be quite good in this. One of his junior asks Walker, who is that guy who was able to move them in a single day, since it's the first for them, and Walker replies that it's an order from above. Their Emperor loves the White Tower, but the junior doesn't understand, and Walker replies that it's a situation between adults. He don't know why he loves them so much. It's true that in the past they made heroic achievements, but it is already 20 years ago. Even if they release a bird with broken wings high up in the sky, it would only fall faster, so he believes that White Tower doesn't have the ability or the right to receive this treatment right now. But he still asks Dolan, how old is he this year? And he replies, 23, making him 3 years old 20 years ago. And Walker was 12 years old back then, the time when humanity received true freedom after victory in the war against the demons. Which makes him wonder, what kind of existence was the White Tower back then? The higher-ups still remember them from back then and cannot let go of their expectations. He then asks Dolan to come with him for another work, and he replies that he thought they were done for today, and Walker declines. He sends some of them home and tells Dolan they are heading west to issue an order to the factories near the Balf River to stop them from illegally dumping pollutants. It is something that he himself added to the schedule. Even if he don't know about the White Tower, he is repaying Oscar and Frank for taking care of Gunman Jack Gang. Dolan asks if they can get something to eat on the way, and he replies, only after they are done. Back to the White Tower, Frank invites Oscar for drink, but he replies that he is on his way to report to Vice Master. And when the Vice Master suddenly pops up, he seems to be quite nervous, and runs away while saying that he got something planned. Vice Master asks if Frank was just here, and Oscar replies that he was, but left as if he had something urgent. Regardless, Vice Master commends Oscar again for resolving something huge, and asks to hear the report in his office, and Oscar was on his way as well. While on the way, he notices that there is something strange with Vice Master. He looks a bit depressed, who finally speaks up, asking if he heard anything from Frank, and he replies, "Nothing in particular." And if something is wrong, and Vice Master replies that he got a message from his family that they would take him back. Oscar gets a bit nervous and asks if Frank agreed to leave the White Tower, but the Vice Master is not sure. They have finished their talks with him, but he don't know the details. We now switch scenes to Frank's room, who gets a knock on his door and he thinks that it's Grank and asks him to come in. But it turns out to be Oscar, who asks, "Who is Grank?" while calling Frank by his full title, youngest son of the greatest trading company in the Empire. Frank's serious, and he sighs knowing that Oscar heard everything. He questions if he is leaving the tower and he apologizes for not telling him earlier. He couldn't say it while being sober, but he needs to go back to help out his family business and get married. It prompts him to ask if he is dating, and he replies that she is apparently a good person from a good family, so it would be of help to their family as well. He asks if he is okay with that, and Frank replies that she is pretty and all, so he is okay with it. But Oscar clarifies that he means giving up on magic. It leaves Frank silent for a moment, who says that his talent only amounts to this much. At first he thought he was special, and if he went to the weakest of tower, he could at least become the head of the snake. But after coming here, it wasn't the case, but he didn't know the reality. He cannot even keep his urn here, but Oscar speaks up with his full name, which makes him a bit nervous as he asks, why is he calling him so scarily? If it's because he said White Tower is weak, but Oscar tells him that he is talented. Hearing which surprises him for a moment, and he thanks Oscar for it. That he get to hear that from a genius while he is leaving, but Oscar tells him that he is serious and asks if he wants to try being the head of the snake. Suddenly, his brother arrives and gives him 5 minutes to hurry up and come down, and continue with his goodbyes, only for Oscar to ask Grank how much for Frank to stay. But Grank asks, who is he to ask that? And he replies that he is Oscar Crusian, his friend. Grank recognizes him as the one who created the vaccine and introduces himself as Frank's brother. Oscar offers him a deal, but Grank finds him impudent and wonders if this is his behavior that he is called a genius. He finds it disrespectful that a mere child is requesting for a deal with the serious family, and Oscar replies that it is not a deal with losses for either of them. He offers to make Frank into a top mage of the White Tower in 2 years, and long term, it would be a big benefit for their family. Grank is surprised to hear that and asks the penalty for failing, and Oscar replies he would hand over the next 50 years worth of profits from selling Cadena flu vaccine and medicine to their company, leaving Frank to call him crazy for that. Grank asks if he even has the authority for it, and he replies he would have the Vice Master as the notary. Grank questions if he is doing that because he finds Frank worthy or just because he is his friend, and Oscar replies that it's obviously because he is worthy, surprising Frank. He plans to return the White Tower to its former glory within 5 years the latest, and for that, he needs Frank serious. Grank finds Oscar young, but as a merchant, there is no reason for him to miss out on the opponent's naivety. So, he wants to add a condition, but Oscar believes that his offer is good enough. Grank thinks that as well, but tells Oscar that he is forgetting something. Merchants values trust over money. He don't do deals with just anyone, so Oscar would have to prove himself. He has a level 5 knight as his guard. At noon tomorrow, Oscar has to fight him and prove his abilities, only after which he would accept his deal, leaving Oscar to ask if he is being serious while knowing that he is a level 2 mage. But Grank adds the condition that the knight won't use sword chi. Oscar realizes that it's basically saying that he won't give Frank up, meaning the family Frank is marrying into is no ordinary family. With that, Grank takes his leave, saying that if he doesn't come, he would take it as surrender. Oscar knows that even he would struggle with a level 5 knight. With Frank freaking out, what is he going to do? And asks him to speak with his brother to cancel it. Suddenly, Oscar realizes something while Frank is freaking out about it. As Oscar replies that it's doable, a level 4 mage would be able to. Frank asks if he is planning to reach level 4 in 1 day, but Oscar replies that it's impossible even for him. But instead it is possible to make a mage who has plateaued at the cusp of level 3 into level 4. He recalls that Grank never said he would have to fight himself, but just had to prove his abilities, so he can just show them. And so, he tells Frank that he is going to make him a level 4 mage, so he should fight for him. Now at the training room at the 40th floor, Frank is scared as he wasn't able to break into level 4 for years, but Oscar assures that it's possible if he trusts him fully. He then instructs him to stand still and circulate mana throughout his whole body, and when he does so, Oscar finds it quite good. But he quickly points out some stuff in his body on various locations. which are the areas where there is loss when he circulates his mana, due to which the level of completion of his magic drops. Frank asks if all geniuses can see that, but he replies, it's just him. Frank questions if he would level up upon fixing that, and Oscar replies that it's unrelated to his level, as 99.9% of mages wouldn't care about it. So Frank doesn't understand the reason behind it, and Oscar replies that 0.1 of mages who cared about them were all archmages. So he has to practice everything, he says, every morning. And he ends up giving Frank a deep explanation on what to do. Frank asks if this is all he needs to do, but Oscar asks to show it to him now, the magic that he used in the fight on the herb field. Frank apologizes, saying that he cannot, and Oscar replies that he thought he trusted him, and Frank says that it's not because of that. But instead, he is scared, and Oscar doesn't understand, as Frank explains that he almost died using that magic before. He got more anxious when he became an adult, since it was obvious his family would mock him if he showed no result, so he was trying to do something that others cannot replicate. His magic made him think, if it weren't just a part of his body, but his entire body that he could turn into wind, he would become incredibly strong. At first, he thought that he succeeded, but he quickly noticed that something is wrong. He was unable to stop the process, and considered it a total failure. His mana became uncontrollable after his body turned into wind. He started screaming for someone to save him, and if it weren't for the Tower Master passing by at that time, he thinks he would have disappeared. It was like his soul was being shattered into hundreds of thousands of pieces. And so, he never wants to feel that again. Oscar questions that he used it on that hill, and he replies that it automatically activates in dangerous situations. He starts calling himself pathetic, and Oscar replies to not think of himself as such, since many mages face problems like this, and Frank asks, really? And he assures, with the solution to it being simple, since in his case, the issue was controlling his mana, so he just needs to supplement that area, but Frank doesn't know how can he supplement that since it's up to talent. Oscar starts drawing something on the ground, saying there is a method to forcefully increase that ability. Frank asks, what is he doing, and he replies that he is drawing a summoning circle, and Frank asks if he is going to make contract with a demon, but Oscar calls him crazy for thinking that, and they would never come even if he calls them. Then what is he summoning? Frank asks, and he replies, a spirit, a wind spirit to transplant into his body. A bit later, and we see Frank trying to summon the wind spirit, only to look like a joker. But nothing works out for him, and Oscar calls his affinity with spirits quite shit. Frank still believes that he just felt some wind, but Oscar replies that it was just him sighing. It irritates him a lot, but Oscar tells him to not be disappointed, since a very small number of humans have spirit affinity after all. He asks if he is screwed from the beginning, since if he cannot call a spirit, how would he control his mana? And Oscar calls it fine, as there is another method. In a spirit summoning ceremony, he learned something when he went to visit the kingdom of elves in his past life. They told him to try it, and so for fun, he did, and succeeded. So he believes that it would work again, and he asks Frank to move to let him try the summoning once. Oscar is quite confident that the Spirit King would remember him, and he starts to focus. Back then, it wasn't a desolate training room like this, but in front of the huge world tree. And so, he begins chanting, Spirit of the Wind, come to me. And we see strong gusts of wind appearing, with Frank being surprised that Oscar succeeded in one go. And we see a huge spirit appearing, asking Oscar if he was the one who called him here, as it's first time in 27 years that someone has called for him. And even at that time, it was Oscar who did it, and asks the spirit that he wants to make a contract. Is there something he needs? But the spirit replies that something as formal as that is not necessary, and asks, will he make a connection of friendship with the highest ranking spirit, Celestin? And Oscar immediately declines, which greatly confuses both the spirit and Frank, with Oscar realizing that he should have started with that, and tells the spirit that he don't need one, but he called him because Frank needs it instead. Now, we fast forward to the next day. Grant greets the vice master, and confirms if he is here to agree with the contract's terms, and he replies that he is. He did have lots of concerns, but decided to agree, because the inventor of the cure is really stubborn, hearing which, Grant gladly accepts the proposal. He then introduces the knight he wants Oscar to fight today, and he introduces himself as Leslie Morgan, and Oscar shakes his hand to greet and introduce himself as well. Grant now begins explaining the contents of the duel. It's a simple method, where whoever takes the necklace of the opponent first wins, and if 5 minutes passes with no victors, they would take it as their loss. Oscar finds the rules pretty good and asks to begin. Grank also informs that he can raise his hand to suspend the duel, but asks if he would be okay with his current outfit in the fight, since his clothes are really loose and would flap around a lot. But Oscar tells him that it's fine, since he is not the one fighting anyways. And we see Frank walking in, seeing whom. Grank is surprised and questions Oscar what is going on, who replies that he told him to prove his ability, not for him to fight personally, so he taught Frank some stuff yesterday. Grank indeed agrees that it was his mistake for not putting a condition that he has to fight personally, but if he is expecting them to go easy since it's Frank, he would be quite delusional. But Oscar replies that it's not it. He only thought that a level 4 mage has a better chance than level 2. Grank is surprised and confused upon hearing that, questioning how could he increased 1 level in a day? Only for Oscar to reply, in order to make him into a top mage in 2 years, he needs to show this much ability. And so, Grank orders Laslie to not go easy on him, who agrees to do so. Oscar pets Frank on the back, assuring him that it's fine. If he does what he instructed him to yesterday, he would definitely win. But Frank still seems a bit hesitant, but regardless steps in the arena. Laslie greets Frank as the young master. Same goes for Frank. And as soon as the signal is given for the match to begin, Frank quickly makes some distance between them. But he suddenly feels chills down his spine, which is the pressure from Laslie drawing his sword. He notes that even without sword chi, and at this distance, Laslie is exuding this much pressure. He almost raises hand, thinking that he might be able to get off if he says that he cannot do it even now. But when he looks at Oscar watching him, he suddenly stops. He remembers the time when Oscar said that he needs him and praised his talent and work, which motivates him for the fight, as he creates wind bullet to shoot. Knowing that for the first time in his life, someone told him that he was needed, so he cannot let their expectations go to waste, though his wind bullet are easily blocked by Laslie, who notes that Frank has gotten better. He is even dual casting and even dispersed his momentum. And when the bullets are coming for him, he wonders if this is what it would feel like to actually face the sword control technique that is used in the Eastern nation. And with this, he has done enough observing and begins to attack Frank instead, who starts to get flustered by his quick speed, and to block it, he creates a large wind palm. Grank is quite surprised by his growth, and asks if Oscar used some kind of forbidden method to achieve these results, who tells him that he don't need to worry, only for Grank to say that he is never worried about him. While watching him, Grank does find Frank to be truly grown a lot, but that is all there is to it. He believes that he doesn't suit a battle mage style. Since he is weaker than others, his growth would hurt him, and there might even be a moment where getting hurt will be a relief. It's more suited if he stays at the corporation. He won't get hurt anywhere and won't make his family worry. And he would never get eaten by his own magic again, as we see Laslie is about to reach Frank's necklace. Just as Grank is thinking it's over, Oscar speaks up before him. And upon finding Oscar smiling, he is surprised and confused as to why he is making such expression. We now go back to last night. The spirit transplant turned out to be successful and asks Frank about his god of wind, and if he comes out well now, and Frank thanks him, since after someone beat him up, it came out naturally. But Oscar tells him that he is not at the level where he can freely turn his body into wind yet, since he has not completely gotten over his trauma, causing Frank to ask if there is no possible way for him to win tomorrow, and Oscar replies, it's possible if he used God of Wind 100%. He questions him if he thought that turning his body into wind is all there is to God of Wind. Frank asks with curiosity if there is something else, and he replies that there is still the most interesting part of God of Wind. It's the real overpowered part, unitization, the ability to turn anything that touches his body, whether it's an item or clothes, into wind. It's the most absurd part of God of Wind, Oscar believes. So it's important that he hide his card until the very end, and we see Frank turning his necklace into wind right as Laslie is about to grab it. This greatly surprises him and catches him off guard, leaving Frank to steal his necklace instead. Frank's necklace turns back, and he sees that he obtained Laslie's necklace as well, which causes him to celebrate his win in excitement. Grank is surprised to see him use God of Wind, as even the magic healer told him that he would never be able to use it again. Vice Master chuckles, asking Grank if he agrees with the results since the match has concluded. He glances towards Oscar and then Frank, noting that this is the result of Oscar teaching him for one day. He seems to have an idea and acknowledges his loss. Now a bit later, it's time for them to leave. With Vice Master finding it disappointing that they are leaving so soon, Grank asks him to please take care of his younger brother. He also compliments Frank that he has grown a bit, who doesn't get it at first, leaving Grank to leave while telling him to forget it, only for Oscar to sigh and call Frank funny for pretending to not hear the compliment. Now on the next day, we see a shocked Frank standing at the entrance of some place. He doesn't understand how can Oscar call it a training room, finding it more akin to a basement prison. Oscar does agrees, since it was exactly that, 100 years ago that is. He also doesn't understand why is he being sent to isolated training even though he didn't do anything wrong, and Oscar replies that Vice Tower Master ordered it himself, meaning he has big expectations of him. It leaves him more annoyed, since he even had rest for a single day with Oscar telling him to think positively, since he needs time to adjust to the spirit as well, and he needs to organize what he learned. Frank reluctantly agrees while Oscar starts pushing him inside, saying that he won't die, only for Frank to ask, "Really?" with a crying face. Oscar apologizes internally, since he was actually the one who requested it. We go back in time a bit, where Vice Master asks his reason to send Frank to isolated training so soon after winning his duel, but Oscar says that he needs this, causing the Vice Master to agree then as well, and Oscar thanks him for it. He also tells him about a good news, that Sirius Company said to use their distribution network freely from now on, free of charge, hearing which surprises him. He realizes that Grank must have done his calculations, the amount of gains their company would get if the White Tower revives itself, and Frank becoming a top mage will be endless. Their intentions are clear, and he don't feel bad about it. And Vice Master has another thing for him, something to ask of him, which is to try take on a lecture. It surprises him a bit, and he replies, it's not that he can't, and starts thinking for a bit, since according to him, Vice Master should be wanting to focus on the potions department right now. And he asks if there is a reason the White Tower mages need to get stronger in a short period of time. Vice Master commends him for catching on quick and asks if he heard of the Mage Night before. And he replies, he has, a day where all mages from each tower gather in one place. It was created to show their growth in abilities and harmony. The Emperor wanted that day to become a bond-creating day between magic towers, but that couldn't happen. They just fight each time they met. It should have gotten cancelled after a few years, but he doesn't understand why is he mentioning it now and asks if the Emperor is trying to revive it. Vice Master agrees, but it has not been revealed to the public yet. The Imperial family will announce the details once the new year arrives, but he hopes that this is simply an old man's bad feeling, but he is being wary of the Black Tower. As long as the Black Tower continues to aim to be one of the 4 main towers, there is a high possibility that the White Tower would be attacked. Even though everyone is doing great, Vice Master is still feeling uneasy. Hearing this, Oscar immediately agrees, with Vice Master commenting on his changed face. Now at Magic Tower, 36th floor, Oscar is annoyed that the Black Tower is trying to push them out, but it's at least relieving to him that he pushed Frank at level 4. The low-level ceremony was a stroke of genius as well. He was surprised to see a demigod remembering a mere human who couldn't even keep his promise. We go back to the day of the spirit summoning, where the spirit was angry when Oscar called him to make contract with someone else. Suddenly, Oscar takes the name of Salafrian of Silence, and to let her know that the White Mage is back. Just as the spirit is getting even more angry at Oscar for taking the name of the Spirit King, he gets a message, which makes him question Oscar, just who is he, to be able to make the Spirit King issue a command. But Oscar replies it would be no fun if he told him, and he informs Oscar that she has allowed it, and it won't be a contract, but a simple transplant. And Oscar thanks him for it. He also informs him that she told him to tell Oscar something, which is to not forget his old promise. He tells her to not worry, since he was able to save so many White Tower families thanks to her. He would make sure to repay her with interest, as he puts up an announcement on the board for his classes. But before that, he plans to take care of his family a bit more. We now to switch to some students, as one of them arrives and asks if this is a class for mages up to level 3, and the girl replies that perhaps it's because it's only for basic lesson. The intermediate mages are all busy. One of the girl comments that it must be really true that White Tower has more money now, since she heard the lecturer is someone Vice Master personally invited, and they are even having a lecture in the main building. It is the place where the Imperial Observation Seminar took place as well. Other blonde girl also thinks that the lecturer must be awesome. Suddenly, someone speaks up, "Don't make me laugh," and it's Damien Proud who tells everyone to not make a fuss over a lecture hall that no one uses. One of the girl calls him out for being too negative, and he replies that if it was an investment, they would have prepared a high-level application-based lecture like the other magic towers, and not reinterpretation of basic magic. And they should be able to tell since only 32 people are here. Only one of the low-level mage didn't come, and if it was that great of a lecture, the noble level 2 genius would have been here as well. And just then, Oscar arrives and uses soundbind, telling everyone to stop with their chatter, leaving one of them surprised as he doesn't understand what kind of silence is this. Oscar steps in, introducing himself as their new lecturer, which surprises everyone, since he is only level 2, as Oscar tells everyone that they must be disappointed by the fact that he is their lecturer, leaving everyone to think that at least he is aware and must have felt guilty, which is why he used a magic so they couldn't talk. But he tells them to leave if they have any complaints, since they are no longer mere academy students receiving the control of teachers. But instead, he has a condition. They have to prove their ability, demonstrating that they have no need to learn. Their time limit is 10 minutes. Within that time, they have to say that they don't want to take his class, which should be quite simple for them, isn't it? But everyone doesn't think so, and calls him crazy for making them unable to speak while telling them to do so. But some of the kids realizes that it's a test and knows for sure that it's not the silent spell since Oscar is level 2. And even if they don't know what it is, they believe it's solvable. Damien realizes that Oscar basically means that if they are not capable enough of breaking the spell and speak, then they should take the class. Oscar did this to check their capabilities. He purposely left some holes in the spell, but he didn't make it easy either. Time passes and Oscar didn't see anyone pass the test yet. But Damien stands up and finally breaks the spell, with Oscar noting that he was listed among the beginner-level mages, and remembers his name from young Oscar's notes and congratulates him for it, with him saying that it was easier than expected. He was struggling with trying to solve it slowly. And as the time is up, Oscar breaks the spell on everyone, with the only person to pass it being Damien proud, which causes him to act all confident and reply that he don't have to take the class now, right? And Oscar allows him to leave. But since he is being allowed to go so easily, he doesn't feel great, and due to the type of first lecture, he actually got curious what he would learn in the class, but he finds it too much to say that he wants to take the class now. Seeing this, Oscar stands up, noting that since he is still a kid, he can see everything on his face, and tells him that he would give him a reward for passing the test and teach him one spell. Damien walks to him and Oscar asks, which basic spell does he like the most, and he replies, Wind Cutter. So Oscar tells him to try it out. Damien finds it bothersome, but still does it, asking if it's enough. Seeing which, Oscar tells him that he would teach him Wind Cutter today. WHCH confuses Damien as he argues if he cannot see it floating in front of him, and Oscar replies, to him it's not Wind Cutter, but a half-baked version at best. He calls out 2 problems in spell while grabbing it. First thing being, the spell isn't made of wind, and asks, what does he think wind is? And Damien replies, that it's moving air, and Oscar explains that water is water, even if it's pooled, fire is fire no matter what shape it takes, but wind is only wind if it's continuously flowing, making Damien realize his mistake, as pooled water would rot. Magic made with air that doesn't flow would lose its form, so they should beware. The White Tower is a place that deals with wind, so their magic needs to be continuously flowing. If not, it would be endlessly destroyed. Damien asks about the second problem, and he replies that there is lots of mana being used needlessly when using the spell. It would be really helpful if he can lessen that amount. Damien doesn't understand how Oscar is able to figure that out, and Oscar thinks that once they get to a certain level, you can figure out a lot just by seeing your opponent use magic, for example, their personality, habits, and even a little of their past, as he asks Damien if he can be a little obtrusive. He begins explaining that he is from the Proud family and must have seen his family's magic growing up, and naturally must have tried to follow them, and Wind Cutter must be the first one he tried to copy. But it was before he learned magic properly, so it was quite difficult, and while he was doing it, he must have forcefully succeeded by using way more mana than needed, and which became his habit. Hearing this all surprises Damien greatly, since it's correct. Oscar continues that since they found out, he would have perfect Wind Cutter, but since an outstanding student like him won't take this class, it's a shame. Only for Damien to go back to his seat, while saying, who said I wasn't taking it? 3 weeks later, it went around the whole tower that Oscar is a star instructor. One of the high-level mages comments that at best, he would only be helpful at an elementary level, and the blue-haired replies that a level 4 and 5 friends were attending his lecture as well. One of them wants to go as well, causing the blue hair one to stand up to go as well. But they notice that it's only 7 right now and the classes start at 9, but the blue one states that they need to stand in line in advance. If they are late, they cannot attend, making other high-level mages sitting around also stand up. The students in Oscar's class notices there are lots of new faces and lots of them are level 4 and 5, even though it's just a basic magic class. And another shocking point that Elder Maxim is here as well, making this class on the level of a Magic Academy seminar. Oscar arrives and greets everyone, saying that the spell they would be learning would be quite important. Everyone gets excited hearing that, as Oscar continues that this spell is most important while living as a mage, the wind spell, leaving everyone speechless. Because it's the most basic of spell, something you can learn without even joining the White Tower. Maxim raises his hand, getting curious to ask, is he really going to teach the wind spell after gathering up so many people? And he agrees while asking Elder Maxim to show him his wind spell. And when he does, we see there is strong gust, making everyone surprised, and Oscar thanks him for it. And now he asks Amy Raven to do the same, who is a bit surprised that Oscar asked her despite there being so many outstanding students here. But upon feeling her wind, everyone finds it cozy and warm, as Oscar asks if anyone knows the difference between their spell was. Some replies, force and range, other replies, vibe, but one of the girl in the back says the temperament of the mana, and Oscar immediately calls out her answer as correct. He calls that it's quite fascinating how Elder Maxim and Amy's spell were different, even though the entire process was same. One was as hot as a desert's wind, and while the other was soft as a spring wind. The difference being so big that it was difficult to consider it the same wind. And then he begins asking them another question. Who understands the temperament of mana? One of them raises his hand and replies, enhancement, acceleration, balance, and speed. But Oscar replies that is the systems of mana, not temperament. They are different concepts, but they must learn about the White Tower's roots. In other words, balance. He asks if someone can explain why the White Tower and Azure Tower are considered the representative of balance. One of them replies, because of the traits the elements have, and Oscar agrees. The Red and Gold Tower are strong and quick, but they are not harmonious. There is no cold fire or lightning, but wind and water can become endlessly hot or cold, which is why they represent balance. But there is a clear difference between Blue and White Tower as well. Like water, the condition to boil it is simple. At standard atmospheric pressure, they need temperature of 100 degrees in a little time, but making hot wind is even simpler. It assimilates even more easily with its surrounding, and its nature changes like chameleon. Wind is more freer than any other element. It can be a strong force like the Red Tower's flame and be as fast as Gold Tower's lightning, or posses as shape-free as the Blue Tower's water. In addition, water cannot mix with oil, but wind has no such condition. Depending on mage's imagination, it is the sole element that can possess any temperament. It can truly be harmonious with everything in this world. So as the mage of the White Tower, they have to be aware of how they think of and view their wind. And right as Oscar is continuing, the students notices something strange about Elder Maxim. Oscar also realizes something and runs towards him, telling everyone to wait, as Elder Maxim seems to be in deep thoughts. Oscar shouts at them to not touch him, as he seems to be in the middle of a breakthrough. He asks everyone to get away from him. They cannot interrupt his enlightenment. One of the girl asks, why is he suddenly like this, and confirms if he is going through an awakening, which Oscar confirms. Soon enough, he opens his eye again, and Oscar asks about his condition, and he replies that he could not reach level 8. But he thanks Oscar regardless by hugging him, and calls him teacher here in the classroom, who thinks that thanks to this, his future lessons would be easier. Now those who are on lower level than Elder Maxim won't be able to attack him. And the greatest profit he got from this is Veronica Fricks. He obtained the attention of one of the problem children listed in Little Oscar's journal. Now on the next day, Oscar seems to be heading somewhere. Veronica told him that there was something interesting in the training room. The reason she acted pretty friendly must be because she enjoyed his lessons, so he needed to know the reason. She started looking at him pathetically again after hearing that he didn't know the fit room. Upon arriving there, he notices the door color is different and also heard that only 3 out of 300 training room are these. Thinking if it's that special, he opens the door, and if they wanted to do this, they should have made a door which opens without touching as well. Upon entering, he notices the different vibes from the other training room. The system greets Oscar, next generation training support system. and Oscar realizes that this training room uses magic engineering, meaning that the Golden Tower must be taking all the money. The system asks him if he would like to register to receive a personalized training course, and Oscar declines. So it proceeds as an unregistered user and asks to decide the level of training he would like, there being 100 levels in this training in total. Oscar begins from level 1, and 3 balls appear, which he has to pop using magic or physical attack. And if he uses a wide area spell, the training would be cancelled, but before it can process, Oscar passes level 1. He finds it decent, and if this is level 1, he raises the level and chooses level 100 directly. The system warns that the size of the balls would decrease, and the balls are greatly accelerated and are hostile towards the user, but Oscar tells it to continue. He wonders how good it is for the system to make a fuss about it, and suddenly, something flies right beside his head, and we see he is surrounded by tons of balls, and in addition the previous rules, now if he gets hit by them 10 times, the training would end. Oscar quickly starts popping them, noting that he just needs to hit them, but at this rate, his mana would run out first. So he plans to use as little power as possible, and noting that it's effective, he makes them small and sharp, and the training level he notes is also surpassed the level for kids. A bit later, and we see he has passed the level 100, and finding it to be a good warm-up. Noting that the mages in this era use this level of training since they are young, the standard for this generation mages must be way higher than before. And so, he plans to work harder, and also build muscles as well. Leaving the room, he encounters Veronica right outside, whom he asks if she is here to train, and she replies, did he thought she was here to eat, or what? Oscar says that he came just to visit. His philosophy is that healthy mana comes from a healthy body, but right as she tries to say it's not his philosophy, he leaves while giving her good luck for her training. It annoys her, and also the fact that he is using Oscar Sage's famous saying as his own quote. She don't understand how did an arrogant noble, who always used to look down on her, change so suddenly, and entering inside, she asks the system to set level 50 as warm-up, and also checks if there is any change to ranking, asking if Killian's still on top, but the system replies, there is, surprising her. And when asked to show, the name only comes out as AAA, and she tries to ask who it is, but the system refuses for security reasons. She guesses that it was Elder, believing that those below level 5 cannot get ranked, as this current rank timing would mean they are first in the continent, and the system agrees. She once again tries asking, who is it, and the system denies again, leaving her annoyed. She then asks if it's Oscar, but once again the system replies with the same, causing her to swear at the system. While walking back, he encounters Elder Maxim, who finds it the perfect timing, as he wanted to ask him something. Fidelina informed him that the merchants aren't buying their potions. Oscar asks for the reason, and he replies that they are afraid of the Blue Tower, and since he is the core of the potion department, he thought he should know. He starts to get pissed thinking about it, also about the long line at the cafe today. He then overhears 2 people standing in front of him, talking about their jobs at the post office. They seems to be talking about stopping the delivery business and perhaps only focus on the potion market. Oscar notes that the delivery isn't a big market. They have to use lots of wind riders, but cannot make much money, and it's not political either. The one benefit is that it receives the overwhelmingly highest citizen evaluation. But the wind riders wants to keep on working hard. Plus, when they give elderly heavy delivery service, they even give them food to eat because they are working hard. Hearing this, Oscar seems to get something and asks them, when delivering, do they bump into people often? And they agree, since they need recipient's signature to show they got the items delivered. Hearing which, Oscar excitedly runs away while shaking their hand. A bit later, and he has at the Vice Master, asking to start a door-to-door delivery service using their wind riders. The Vice Master gets his idea. Since merchants aren't working, he is going directly to the consumers, but asks if it's not realistically impossible, since their potions aren't used in day-to-day life. But Oscar plans to make new ones with a big smirk on his face. He asks if it's innovation, and Oscar replies that they don't need to call it that. He explains that there is a mid-level recovery potion that has the greatest effect in the White Tower, so they can slightly adjust the potion to be divided into 4 based on age and gender. He then goes on to explain the full process to the Vice Master, only for him to flinch at all that explanation. Now a few days later, we see an old man, complaining that he is not as energetic as before, and suddenly, one of the Wind Riders arrive, greeting him and saying it's nice to meet him again. He gives him a letter from his friend, and he is surprised to know that he is still alive, but complains about his head and body getting heavier, causing the Wind Rider to ask if he is hurt. And he replies that it's not that. He just don't have much energy. So the Wind Rider reaches in his bag and asks if he wants to try something then. He tries asking, "What is it?" And he replies that it's their magic tower's newest creation, a tonic. The old man asks, "What does it mean?" And the boy replies that it's ranked 0 in importance when it comes to seniors. It would strengthen their immunity and improve energy as well, but the old man doesn't believe anything would change for him after drinking this. He gives of an example of the old man Miller who lives on the 2nd Street. He had this last week and is getting ready for his next hike, surprising the old man, since he knows Miller has a knee problem. The boy explains that it's a tonic that Oscar, the tower's extraordinary genius, created himself. It's a name which even the old man has heard somewhere, and he reminds him that it's the same guy who created that vaccine. But the old man believes that it would be expensive since such a genius created it, only to be proven wrong by hearing the price of 30 bells and 1 tonic per week. But the old man doesn't believe, since he took these tonics before and he don't trust pharmacists anymore. The boy asks the old man if he thinks that he would have brought him an expensive gift himself, and he got an offer too. Seeing he has an offer, the old man gets intrigued. He tells him about a special event for Serin residents. If he requests a 1-year subscription, they would deliver a tonic every week, and with the price being only 800 bells, he can do monthly installments as well. The old man starts to get convinced, believing he can pay for it if he smokes less, and the boy offers the first bottle for free as well, which is what excites the old man most. Now on the next day, his body starts to feel much lighter than usual. He wonders if it's because of the tonic that he drank yesterday, and only from a single bottle at that. We see him meeting his friends, who thought that he had died after not seeing him for a while, and he replies that he was resting since his body was in pain. We then see them playing a game of chess, with his friends being surprised at him for getting so good at chess suddenly, and he replies that he can focus better than usual. They both ask to let them know if he got something good while he was resting or something, and he replies that it was tonic that White Tower created, but they call it bullshit at first, only for him to start explaining. We switch scenes to Oscar, as someone arrives and shows him a newspaper, saying that there is trouble, their potions are going to rot at this rate. The Azure Tower is apparently running a sale, and Oscar replies, "Look at them doing cute things." But Lena is panicking, believing that they are going to kick them off the market like this, and doesn't understand their reason for sale despite not getting any profits, and Oscar replies that they would hardly last 2 or 3 weeks. But Lena argues it would still be a month, and they might not be able to enter the potion market then, so they should sell Cadena Flu and Recovery Potion together. But Oscar declines, since it's the situation that Azure Tower wants the most right now. If they try to sell potions using the flu disaster, then people would be furious, and Azure Tower will have a pretext to attack them, saying that they took people's life as hostage. Lena asks if he just wants to get beat up like this, and he confirms if they have lots of potion in storage. She replies, to the point they wouldn't know if someone stole hundreds of bottles, which he calls good and annoys Lena. He shows her the recipe for Zero Tonic series and asks if they can reproduce all the mid-level potions as tonics. She asks if he means all of the stocks, and he doesn't see a reason for keeping the potions that won't sell. He plans to add benefits as well, such as if one family buys more than 2 from the Zero series, they would add additional discounts, so the purchasing barrier would get lower. This talk of Oscar makes Lena distrust the whole concept of discount themselves, and Oscar also plans to pay the Information Guild to spread a rumor. Lena asks, what kind, and he replies, M0. It would be a fun if they spread a rumor that it helps in virility as well, making her a bit disgusted as she asks if it would help them with sales. We fast forward to 3 weeks later at the Azure Tower. Moira thinks that it's done. They have stomped down the White Tower completely, and their department head would be satisfied with this. The department arrives and asks Moira if he saw the news, but he happily replies, not yet, only to get smack on the head for smiling, and he orders him to read it. Reading it up, he is filled with despair as the department head asks if this is the best he could do. Did he give up all those profits for these results? As we see, the White Tower's tonics are insanely popular now, but Moira doesn't understand, since he never saw them in the market. But he soon realizes the reason, which is also the reason that it was no aggregated in the market sales volume. Head of department also asks if he saw the White Tower saying that they would keep the discount forever, since they were deeply touched by the Azure Tower, but Moira calls it a scam, since it's the price they were going to sell it from the start. But the public doesn't know that. The head argues. That bottle has not been sold anywhere before. He questions if he was looking at the graph and getting happy. Now, no matter what kind of pressure they try to put, it would be hard for the potion market to ignore White Tower. Since the public would want the White Tower's potions, they would be around this level instead. He warns Moira that he would be busy moving forward. In order to recover the losses that Azure Tower has faced, even having him work without pay for the rest of his life won't be enough. We now switch to a place far away, continent's east side, Yin Dynasty. We see a huge monster attacking some swordsmen, who are trying to protect the village from it, as he smacks them away. They don't know what to do and gets anxious, only to feel a wind the next moment. And we see someone is here, telling the monster to return to his territory while flying high up in the sky. And if he don't, then she would return him to dirt. As she begins using her innate magic, Restless Wind, to easily slice the monster apart in pieces, while noting that this keeps on happening recently, while the guy behind her asks if she is from the White Tower. And she asks if he is Zhang Chun, and the guy apologizes for the late greeting and introduces himself, so she also starts removing her hood. And we see it's Shasha maced, and get our first proper look at her beauty. She asks them if they bring what he had asked of the Nine Dragon sect leader, and he replies that he got the newsletter she asked for. The sect leader also said that the West is full of articles about the White Tower recently. Hearing which, she gets scared, wondering, what if their tower has gone bankrupt? What if they were permanently kicked out of the 4 main magic towers? Because if that happens, she won't be able to face her master. But upon opening her eyes and reading the articles, she is absolutely shocked from all the news and success. She asks if it's some kind of novel or if he made these stories up to not get her upset, but he replies, of course not. Forgetting other things, even the delivery business is doing really well. It's not something which she thought would be successful. She had another goal for doing that. She tells Zhang Chun that she would head back and to wire the commission fee under the Imperial bank account, and decides to head straight to the White Tower, believing that she needs to check what is going on there herself. We switch scenes to Lena, who asserts that Oscar is really a mage, because the situation was really like magic. He was able to shake the Azure Tower with a single interview. Thanks to him, the sales of Recover Potion boomed. Oscar asks about the reactions. She replies that countless cities other than Serin have requested for them to be distributed there. But it's still ambivalent in the military, and Oscar tells her not worry about them for now, since they always had a good deal with Azure Tower. He also asks her to not report to him anymore since there are no further issues with the potions, and asks, why does she even does it in the first place? She mentally answers, it's because he is the head of that department. She asks about the performance report, and once a month is fine for him. She asks if he is going to leave all the work to her and play around himself, but he replies that he is busy as well. Now he plans to take care of the internal stability, stuff like restoring lost magic books. It won't take him much to make, but it would be weird if he suddenly announces high-level theories like that, even if he is known as a genius. So he wants to do it under someone else's name, someone with enough knowledge about magic, enough fame and status and good age. He hopes someone like that falls from the sky. And next panel, someone comes out from a room after quite a while, noting that they haven't seen sunlight in a while. Elder Fidelina and Maxim both greets him since it's been a while and asks about his research, which he replies is not going well. He is the theory mage of the tower, Schweinkoch. He is in despair for unable to find the result value, and he needs it to present it at the White Night Festival. But Maxim tells him to not rush, since it's quite difficult. He has been researching this for 7 years now, which he believes would be all over if he can just find the result value. Maxim suggests to take in an assistant, such as Oscar, but he doesn't believe a level 1 mage would understand it in the first place. But Fidelina informs that he is level 2 now, and Schwein doesn't seem impressed, but Fidelina says that he worked hard. He also asks if she didn't hate Oscar before, and she replies that it was before, with Maxim telling him that he must not know about the recent news in the tower, and asks if he doesn't feel the atmosphere has changed here, which he notices as well. Everyone's complexion is looking better, as if they won lottery. Maxim credits it all to Oscar. Fidelina also finds it disappointing that he wasn't here when all of it was going on. A bit later, they both finish explaining all the stuff that happened, and he seems surprised to know that Oscar is good at alchemy. And they both excitedly claim, not only that, but he is also possessed by a ghost of businessmen, and he is even great at lectures. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he is on the level of a high mage when it comes to theory. Schwein tells them to calm down. He plans to meet him since they are recommending, but he still won't expect much. He claims to not looking down on him. It's just, even looking at the same thing from the first floor and the rooftop is different when it comes to information gained. Even if he is a genius, his view is limited to a level 2 mage. While he is researching on restoring the innate magic of the genius of all geniuses, the Archmage, Oscar Sage. A bit later, and Oscar receives a sudden test from Schwein. He introduces himself first as major in theoretical magic and someone who is working on restoring lost magic. He explains a bit about his current situation, and Oscar is excited to meet him since he is exactly the person he was looking for. He also apologizes to Oscar for giving him a test, even though he is looking for a favor, but Oscar tells him it's fine, since it would make sense to look at someone's ability when looking for a researcher, making Schwein commend his attitude. He gives him 50 minutes for the test, and with him around, Oscar believes no one would care about a level 2 mage's contribution. He finds the test quite easy, and based on the questions, he notes that he is looking for someone to check for basic errors, so he must be at final revisions and is about to find the result value. Schwein is surprised to see him solve everything quickly, since he deems it impossible unless he can think similarly and knows concepts of high-level mages. Noting he is on the last page, he assumes that Oscar is upset that he cannot solve the problems, so he is half-assing them. And seeing his surprised face, he assumes that he must be surprised since the questions are of another dimensions. But he is surprised because it's about the magic he made, and he quickly writes down about it and hands the test over. Schwein commends him for the good work, but finds it disappointing that he wrote down the answer to the last question without even thinking. He wanted to see how he approached the question if they worked together, but he believes he didn't even try to solve it since it was difficult. He had increased expectations due to them too recommending him. And upon noting the last answer, he asks if he thinks his answer to the last question is correct, which he does, so Schwein asks, what of the 4 mana values he wrote, and he replies, all of them. He wrote it with fluid mana approach. Schwein's eyes shine bright as he asks Oscar if he can use these values right now to test the magic. And a bit later, we see Schwein is shocked to finally see the magic activated and wonders, how is it possible? He shakes his hand and plans to credit him as the co-author instead of just a supporting researcher, which Oscar finds opposite of his plan. He confirms if this is the magic that he has been researching, and he replies, indeed. The last question he solved, the magic that previous generation magic master, Oscar Sage created, Ouroboros. The last question he solved, the magic that previous generation magic master, Oscar Sage created, Ouroboros. It requires you to only use mana once, and creates a nearly unlimited supply of wind, defying the law of conservation of mana, a perfect mana source in theory, which is why it was named Ouroboros, representing eternity. It might seem elaborate, but it was a failure, since humanity, which conquered land and water, could not reach their final destination. Conquering the sky was the aim of the Blue Sky Project. In the war against the demons, to gain an advantage, they planned to create an aircraft, and for its source, he made this magic. It was perfect in theory, but it didn't produce enough power to power an aircraft. So he believes there were many magic he could have recovered, unless he needs it for something that requires as much energy as aircraft. Suddenly, Schwein expresses that he wants to tell Shasha quickly about it. She would be really happy to see the foundation stone of the delivery service has been prepared, surprising Oscar that the delivery service was for this magic. He starts crying tears of disappointment, telling Shasha regardless of how much she might miss him, she still shouldn't have made Schwein recover such magic. But he tells Oscar that he was the one who fulfilled the long-time wish of Shasha and him. The first step to open up the sky path is completed now. Oscar asks if he is repeating the same challenge from the past, and he agrees, but Oscar argues if it's not impossible to fly an aircraft using only the wind generated by magic, and he agrees that with just Ouroboros, an aircraft could never be created. But hearing the word, just, Oscar is a bit surprised and confused. And Schwein tells him that things are different from back then, since now they have this, and Oscar realizes that he is talking about magic engineering. Schwein explains that when Oscar Sage got the idea of an airship, he was working with the Golden Tower, which gave them the clue to magic engineering. So after the war ended, they started developing like crazy. Hearing which makes Oscar think he should have discovered it first, and Schwein continues that they can probably use magic engineering to boost the output of Ouroboros' spell. And he plans to use a battery as the medium. which would recharge using Ouroboros' wind. And what if they can continuously use it to increase the mana? It can allow for a strong heart that provides infinite power. Oscar asks if the Golden Tower knows about it. Schwein claims they don't. They considered the idea of an airship absurd, so they are inventing a new transportation method instead. An iron horse that endlessly rides the land, which they are calling a train. While Oscar is not sure that it's like, he knows that they don't cling on a failed business, so he is sure the train would also bring new concept to humanity. But he believes it won't still be as shocking as an airship. Oscar realizes the reason they hung on the delivery business, which was to monopolize the sky market. Schwein agrees, as the transportation right now is only done through ships and carriages. But once train would become active, it would change, and once they make an airship, even the train would be a relic of the past. So, to usher the new age of beginning, both him and Sasha put everything on the line to recover the Ouroboros spell and plan to reveal it at the White Night Festival, which he thanks to Oscar. It made him emotional, knowing that the dream he gave up on thinking as impossible was brought back to life by his own disciple. So he plans to open her way as her master, as he tells Schwein to go a bit further and reveal a prototype of the airship at the festival. Schwein also believes it would be more impactful, and so he shares some materials with Oscar, who asks, "What is all this?" The formulas are something Oscar never saw before, and Schwein explains they are related to the magic-engineered battery. And so, Oscar sits down to take a look at it properly, finding it quite thorough and checking all the bases. Schwein asks for his opinion, and Oscar calls it great. But before they start, Schwein wants to tell him something. He wants to apologize first, making Oscar nervous, as he wonders if he figured something out. But Schwein replies that he dragged him into something dangerous, since once they announced this, the Golden Tower would try to impede them no matter what. Though Oscar finds it a no problem and assures Schwein that it's fine, who calls him out for taking it too lightly. But Oscar replies that he knows they would try to sue them for groundless reasons and even secretly attempt to assassinate them. But if he is scared for his life and look for such reasons, he won't be able to do anything, which scares him the most. To be scared and running away forever, unable to advance, and being an empty shell. The White Tower lost many things, all of their markets to other towers, so he believes they would be able to stand against them with this research. When thinking that, he is fine with any external dangers. Schwein chuckles on it, feeling upset that all of his cool lines were stolen like this, but Oscar comments that he is still cool regardless. They both shake each other hands, with plans to move forward together. Now we see as days passes, they continue to test their theories and work on the possible prototype to show at the festival. Oscar gets up to get some meals since they've been locked up inside, but suddenly, they get a blackout, which seems to be a common occurrence. Noting that it's quite frequent, Oscar decides to rest for now. Now fast forward after 6 days, Schwein expresses his thanks again that he was able to complete the spell because of Oscar, who replies that he would have completed it anyways. Schwein expresses that at first, he thought it would be difficult to announce the airship at the festival, but now they have advanced the magic to the point that it seems real. But in the middle of the talking, it again blackouts, leading Oscar to comment that the power station has no sense at this touching moment, leading Schwein to laugh. An announcement is made later for Oscar, calling him to the Vice Tower Master's office immediately. Schwein tells him to go ahead, assuring that he would complete the battery at all costs while he is gone. The Vice Master tells him about the frequent blackouts, which Oscar agrees. He explains, judging from the mana supply getting cut, they would need to clean the power station, and Oscar quickly agrees to go. But he also gets informed that there are lots of slimes there. But Oscar plans to get rid of them and asks for the time to leave, and Vice Master replies to go tomorrow and meet up with Veronica at the tower entrance, causing Oscar to ask if the threat level is such that it requires a level 4 mage. And the Vice Master chuckles, digging up a rule that low-level mages have to go in pairs, and that Veronica seems to have some troubles, so it would be nice to give her some inspiration. Oscar is quick to understand his intentions, noting that slimes are an excuse. He wants Oscar to give Veronica some advice. Fast forward. Veronica complains to Oscar for being late, but he argues that he is 5 minutes early, annoying her, so she tells him to shut up and get inside. While on the way, Veronica warns him that they are not going to a lecture hall today. And Oscar replies, he knows, and Veronica says that it's not what she is talking about, and asserts that she is in charge in this mission. Because even if Oscar is a little more knowledgeable in theory, she has way more experience in combat. Oscar understands that she is trying to tell him to not act like a teacher there. After a bit of silence, Oscar again speaks up, asking if she not slept well since she seems tired, and she replies to shut up because she needs to go to sleep. Oscar again tries to pry that if she is concerned about something, pissing her off. But he continues to smile, hoping to help her with her troubles, and that she should take the path in front of her if there is one, annoying her again. Oscar remembers her as the incredible talent which little Oscar wrote several times in his journal. It gets him wondering, just what kind of talent does she have for him to have emphasized it so much? He again asks her to tell her problem, since she might feel more comfortable after. It makes Veronica remember that Oscar was the reason that she is having trouble lately. She wanted to make her wind like Elder Maxim, but is unable to despite practicing tons already, believing that this level of question isn't him teaching, but it's a compensation for her lack of sleep. So, she asks, what did he mean by that? And he replies that she has hit a wall mainly due to his last class about nature of mana. She agrees, expressing that she wanted a wind like Elder Maxim, but is unable to despite practicing however much, and Oscar calls it obvious. The reason is that the wind itself is not suitable for her. She replies, it's because he don't know her, but she always wanted a strong wind since long ago. Oscar replies that sometimes outside perspective is more accurate, and as an example, he asks her about the wind that would suit him the most. She answers, arrogant and annoying, but Oscar chuckles, correcting that his wind is famous for being very warm and cozy, though she claims that she never heard of it. Oscar finds it fascinating as well, because he doesn't think himself as a warm person. But mana temperament isn't something that she can get because she wants, but she has to find the one most suitable for her instead. And by that logic, she replies that Oscar must have annoying wind. Now fast forward, and they arrive in front of the mana power station. Oscar notes the number of slimes, realizing the reason there were so many frequent power cuts. And seeing Veronica taking care of them like this, he realizes why was she praised highly by little Oscar. She is using super high speed chance and casting spells that a level 5 mage would take at least 7 seconds to process. And if he could train her, she can be a spell shooter like Majuro, whose high speed casting didn't allow even high level demons to get near. But as he is lost in thoughts, Veronica gets pissed at him for simply standing there and watching, causing him to get a bit nervous as he finally joins in. She comments that all the slimes are gathered up at the entrance, and it seems to have made him realize something as he starts going further inside. Veronica tells him to forget about inside and focus on the outside first, but he calls it all quite strange. Looking at how they are moving, they are all headed towards entrance, almost like trying to run away from the power station. Veronica argues that they don't have intelligence, and Oscar replies it's because they don't have it. They are even more faithful to their instincts, and the strongest one is their survival instinct. So he tells her to hurry up, and she replies to not order her around. Inside the power room, we see a giant cocoon, seeing which Veronica is quite surprised. Oscar explains that it's a type of silkworm moth that is called silkworm of the skies. While other silkworm eat mulberries, this one eats mana. So it must have crawled to this place. Due to its high amount of mana, Veronica nervously asks if it's not born yet. He replies that it's already born, but in metamorphosis, she asks if the problem would be solved if they just get rid of that thing. Oscar has 2 pieces of news for her, good and bad. The good being that it's not dangerous in its current state. If they bring Elder Maxim, it would be over in 5 seconds. She gets a bit relieved, commenting that it's nothing much, but Oscar isn't finished speaking, explaining that they feel extreme hunger right after metamorphosis, so they eat every living being around them. Veronica doesn't find it too concerning, since they just have to get Elder Maxim before then. Once again, Oscar is not done yet, and she suddenly hears some strange sounds as Oscar continues that the sound is it breaking through the cocoon. So she should prepare to fight. She is quite nervous upon seeing it, finding it really big, and wishing that it won't fly since it's a silkworm moth. Oscar replies that this one does fly just fine. She suggests to run, but Oscar declines since if they do, it would fly it to the nearby city and eat people there. So they need to stop it here somehow. And so, she steps up despite being scared, telling Oscar to get back, which impresses him. He quickly uses a message spell to give to the horseman, hoping that he is nearby to call reinforcement for them. She starts up with a large wind press spell, trying to crush it down. She then uses the jet boost spell to quickly close the distance. But much to her surprise, Oscar quickly pulls her back, and uses wind to disperse the feces of the white silkworm, touching which would have immediately melted her. And that the silkworm left the opening on purpose, despite being an insect, It's highly intelligent. But she questions, how did he notice the powder? It's not even visible. And he replies that he focused on the mana with his IUs and saw every particle floating in the air. And as she is calling it a ridiculous thing to do, Oscar glances back and she realizes it's possible. And before she explains, the moth attacks them with a large beam and he quickly puts up a shield to defend against it. He finds the situation to be quite dire. Only after blocking a single attack, his mana is down to 30%, but luckily, its shooting has a delay of a minute. He tells Veronica to finish it all within 5 minutes. But looking back, we see she is quite damaged through her legs. He realizes when blocking that attack earlier, some of the particles go through part of the shield. She tells him to go on first, planning to buy some time for him. But Oscar knows that she is lying, seeing how the air around her is vibrating. But he calms her down, saying that he would never leave without her, so she don't need to worry. She tries to argue that she is not scared, but Oscar gets up saying that mages of White Tower never leave their comrade behind. He quickly uses the accelerate spell, planning to finish it one breath with the remaining mana that he has. She shouts at him in worry, questioning, how is he going to fight against that thing? But if he ends up dying, she would really kill him. Meanwhile, Oscar is in the air, being relieved that he brought something with himself. And we see him pulling out the Trinity weapon, shooting the moth while telling it goodbye.